All right, intro. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 99 of the Migtown podcast, your only weekly source for all of the hard-hitting facts that get you out of jail. As usual, I'm producer Tim. Joining me is the mayor of Migtown, Drexel. Say hi.
Hello, everybody, and hello to my guest, my esteemed guest, who people have been telling me about for quite some time, Mr. Branca, because I want to say it hasn't been about a year, I think, since like you were on Nick, and people were telling me about you around that time, right? About a year-ish, maybe eight, 9 months. Something. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was on Nick's show like maybe a couple years ago. I think he had me on, but I didn't know who he was. You know, I get these invitations all the time to be on people's shows, and I'm a bit of a show whore, so I always say yes, and I'm on the show, but I don't really know who the people are. I didn't know who Nick was, but then it was during one of the trials. I think it was after Rittenhouse was wrapped up, or late in the Rittenhouse trial. I went on the show, and it was a very different experience. I mean, the first experience was fine, but it was much more fun, much more engaging. And since then, yeah, I spent many an hour with Nick live streaming on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's like, so I finally got to see you, of course, on Andrew's show, the other Andrew, right? Legal Mindset, shout out to him. And so I'd heard about you because you are in a very special place. You are in New York, which if you live outside of New York, then you I'm sure you've heard all the noise about New York.
Oh, if you're talking to me, I'm not in New York.
Oh, I thought you were in New York, or you're from New York.
No,
right?
I grew up in New York.
Okay, you grew up in New York. Well, I mean, hell, you made it out then, because I know you've been hearing how bad New York is, man. It is literally escape from New York.
To me, it's like Back to the Future. So I was working as a diesel mechanic in New York in like the late 70s, early 80s in Harlem, New York, before Harlem was nice. It looked, when I worked there, First Avenue, 125th Street, right on the Harlem River. It looked like Berlin after World War II. I mean, it was.
Oh yeah,
it was horrific, and the crime was everywhere. It was like it is today. You see these videos of people shoving others off of subway platforms onto the rails. That was happening all the time.
Yep.
I mean, these vicious beatings. That was normal in the late 70s, early 80s until Giuliani cleaned things up. Which was beautiful, by the way. It was amazing to me having experienced the bad New York, and just 8 years later, New York was beautiful. But it's returning back to the old ways.
Oh, it has to. Well, you know, this is what a lot of people don't understand, Andrew, is that like things come in cycles, right? You know, like there's good times, there's bad times. Like people forget that Detroit was not always a shithole. Gary, Indiana was not always a shithole, right? But if you tell
Detroit was one of the capital cities of the world.
It was one. It was like if you said there was a certain point in time where if you said I live and work in Detroit, it was like you've arrived. You know what I'm saying? Like you're a made man because you're in Detroit.
But unfortunately, Detroit didn't cycle. Detroit hit a tipping point.
Nope.
And it's gone.
Well, you know what's crazy is that like if you drain the swamp in Detroit, right? You flush people in the Detroit River, and what would come next would be like this. You and I both know how to get, when someone asks you, how do you get a city or a country, whatever, like really moving, right? It's always been about commerce, right? You need to get business because think about it. So Andrew, you get businesses in place, right? And then what do those businesses bring? They bring talent, as in jobs, right? And if you have good jobs, especially with men working, what comes next? We're talking about before social media, all the dating apps, before all that came. When you have good, hardworking men and they all gravitate toward one place, well, as they start having money, what's the next thing they think about it, Andrew? They're like, I got all this money. What comes next? Especially back then, I want a family, right?
Sure, a legacy.
A girl, legacy. So they say, I got this girl, Andrew. She's a quality woman. I have a great job. We get together, have the kids, and that's how the suburbs start forming around the cities. Fast forward to today. Do you know what I think has changed the most? Is there's an individualistic mindset that has permeated the culture, right? Like, you don't hear people talking about, like, think about it. If I said, hey, Andrew, how much did people talk legacy when you were a boy, right? Like, in terms of, I'll tell you something that changed. Family name. Remember that? Remember that? Getting the family name talk?
It was important to my name and my family.
You could not go out. Like I said, there's a reason why I have a clean criminal record. There's a reason. People say, well, Drex, how come you avoided trouble? Well, I'll tell you what. When Dad is in the house, and Chris Rock talked about this, right? He said, do you know what kids are missing now, Andrew? Wait till Dad gets home. That's what kids are missing. When that was a threat, when you were growing up, when that was a real threat, there was a standard set, right? You couldn't just go out doing whatever the hell you wanted because you knew, like, oh shit, man, if Dad finds out.
Right.
That was always the thing. Because here's the thing, if Mom found out, what did that mean? She was gonna go tell Dad.
Right.
Dad in the home takes all.
You might dabble. You might dabble here and there. I mean, we're all young men, but you knew if you got caught, there were going to be consequences.
Now I gotta say this though. This is what's funny about when Dad comes home. There's something that gets left out. And I was when I did that show, I hopped in to talk to Jeff. Shout out to my man Legal Vices. I was on that show and I talked about making bullying great again, right? And a lot of people don't understand what I mean by that because they think like, well, Drex, you just want kids just going around beating people up? No. What I want is a world where all of these kids are constantly being tested with physical violence. And do you know why? Because when they do that, guess what happens? So this is what happens, Andrew. We're in this point now where people say this, Andrew, but I don't want kids to have any hardship. They should have all safe spaces. Okay, watch this. All right, we'll give you that, right? And then we do a SpongeBob. 20 years later.
Right.
What happens to those kids that were protected from everything bad in the world, Andrew? They're probably fat. They're probably lazy. They're triggered by everything, right? They fall for anything. They have no actual value system, right? If you say, hey, man, what do you believe in? What's the current thing? Is it Stop Asian Hate? Then I'm Stop Asian Hate. Is it BLM? Then I'm BLM. Is it Blue Lives Matter?
Flag.
Do you notice that, Andrew? Back when we were growing up, people had an opinion. They were like this. If they didn't know something, like, hey, I don't know about it, so I'll get back to you. But as a general rule of thumb, this is where my values align, right? So to compound that, when you had bullying, the most beautiful thing imaginable occurred. Mr. Branca, there were no school shootings. That's what didn't happen. See? Oh, watch this.
And by the way, we all had guns.
Yeah, that's the thing. People had guns, people had shanks, right? But when someone goes,
we all had guns.
What was different? People weren't deleting each other in these schools going, I'm mad at the world because a girl didn't touch my pee-pee. And then they decided, I'm going to go delete everybody, right? That didn't have, and this is another thing, Andrew, other than like literal serial killers, right? We never heard about indiscriminate eating, right? Like people didn't go up saying, I'm going to shoot up everybody in the class. It doesn't matter if I like them or hate them, right? Never happened. So when I say make bullying great again, the masculinity is gone. And I want to ask you this though, so Branca, there's an all-out assault on masculinity, right? They always want these boys in dresses. They want them looking effeminate. They want them having little soy faces. What is your take on that and what it means for our future?
It's a good way for civilization to die.
It happened to everybody before us, right?
I mean, it's the being a weak, helpless, girly man is not being a good man, as Jordan Peterson says. Being a good man is being a dangerous man man who has that under control.
Yep.
Yeah, because Drex, we've covered this before. Who does the HMTs? It's not someone who understands the truth about the world. It's someone who thought the world was one way and then had a pallet of bricks dropped on their head when a girl Me Too'd them. Or, we covered the one case, right? The one savage, he macheted her because she threatened to expose that he was blowing dudes in the alleyway.
Yeah. She was going to expose his tickle booty ways, right? He was down low, right? And she was now I will say this though, to be fair, if you ever find yourself in that position, and this is one of the problems that women have, they've never been held accountable. So they don't actually believe that guy is going to put on the hockey mask, right? They're like, oh, Andrew, he's not going to do anything. Like you've been out and about, right? You're a self-defense guy. How many times have you seen women get in guys' faces, Branca?
Oh, all the time. I mean, most domestic
right?
violence is actually women. I mean,
It's
one of the big lies is that all these men are beating up their wives and significant others. The physically aggressive domestic violence actors are women. They're not men, and in large part because women know they won't be held accountable.
That's
Men
right.
know that if they leave a slight red mark on a woman's face, they're going to prison.
Yep.
And in some states, it's mandatory if the cops are called to a DV, it's mandatory they take someone away.
And it's the easiest thing for the cops to do. It's, that's the easiest thing for the cops to do anyway. I mean, they don't want to be held accountable if something goes wrong. So they just cuff somebody up. I mean, that's what they do. That's the job of a cop. They just cuff somebody up and take them away. And they feed them down the pipeline to the next step in the criminal justice system. And it's not their problem anymore. And they go get another cup of coffee. I'm not criticizing the cops for this. If I were a cop, I'd do the same thing.
Well, less paperwork.
Now, this is what's wild, though, is there's all this going on, right, with the falsehoods, right? Like what Tim said, a lot of people swallowed a false narrative, and then they wound up paying the price. Now, I got to say this, though. So, Branca, we have people swallowing false pills of hope and lies and everything else.
Yeah.
Domestic violation. What do you think your average normie, because I don't even like being around normies, honestly. What do you think the average normie, especially in your line of work, have you noticed a change in mindset after the Depp-Heard trial?
Oh, you mean in terms of people's perceptions? Maybe they talk.
Because you remember before it was man bad, right? Oh, yeah. He definitely did. Okay, do you remember when she first made the allegations?
Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Obviously, he was guilty.
Obviously, he's guilty.
Monster. Right?
Well, yeah, he has to be a monster. And Johnny Depp is like 5'7", 5'8", like a buck. I don't know, 60 maybe, right? He's not a very large guy. And by all accounts, he's not violent, right? By his ex-wife. No one's ever said anything. So they're like, so when they made these allegations, they said,
I mean, the guy's my age, 57 years old, and they couldn't find a single person to say he'd ever been violent or threatening to anybody.
Yep. But there's the one, right? So here's what's funny. The one who did say he was violent, ironically enough, was violent with her ex-partners, right? Imagine that. And that's my question to you. What have you noticed about, just like I said, I know that you bump into a lot of people just out and about. When that case was going on now after the case, and people are starting to see more and more of these Me Too cases fall apart.
I think people are more comfortable observing that, in fact, a lot of domestic violence, I would say the majority of it, the physical violence, as well as the emotional violence, is by women, is initiated by women. I think before people didn't want to say that because it seemed so contrary to the publicly acceptable narrative. But the Covington window is shifted a bit now. So people can say, well, listen, we have here a real life example of this happening. It was the woman. And so I'm comfortable now saying maybe in other cases, it's also the woman being the physical, emotional abuse aggressor. And the truth is that is the reality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about this. Tim and I have talked about it. The issue of female couples, right? So here you got your girls who say that, as soon as it's going to be woman on woman love, that nothing's going to go wrong, right? Because the big, bad, scary man is going to be gone. And then, what's that, Andrew? The highest rates of domestic violation. The highest rate
of domestic violence.
Right.
Now, have you ever presided over one of those cases in your practice?
Well, that's not the kind of work I do, really. It's the work I do is not DV. It's much more serious forms of most of the work I do.
So it's like someone had to brandish a firearm. Yeah. Someone had to brandish a firearm and all that, right? So now, like I said, I know you're a large gun advocate in of course self-defense. Now, I gotta say this about self-defense. It's my biggest gripe, and I've had this gripe since I learned the truth about the way society works. Self-defense law is all a hoax. Because all these laws are a hoax. And let me explain why. Lawyers will always look you in the face and go like this. This is the way the letter of the law says, Drex. And then what happens? A guy like me goes like this. I know it says that, but in reality, like, watch this. Hey, Branca, a woman punched me in the face. I get to retaliate, right?
Yeah.
It's
two completely different things. So you have the black letter of the law. What should happen as a result of the legal merits, the law and the facts of the case. That's like baby step one. But it's not like the criminal justice system is a magic box where you put law and evidence in one side and you crank the handle and you get justice with a capital J out the other side. That's not how it works. That box is full of crazy people. That box is full of prosecutors and judges and jurors. And that adds a lot of chaos to the system. I mean, every case I work on, I tell the client, listen, if they're offering you a plea, we better think about it, because if I put you in front of a jury, there's a 10% chance you get convicted. I don't care how innocent you are. That's the chaos. That's the noise.
Do you ever see that as a scary thing? Because like
it's terrifying.
That's scary, right? Like you're like, okay, prime example. We'll go back to the Depp thing, right? Even with all that evidence, I know if you were his lawyer, you'd still be like, yeah, man. I mean, there's no guarantee. You see what I'm saying? You could have recordings. You could have, pictures, video. And it's like, yeah, he could be thinking, well, I have to get off, right? Because, I mean, there it is, right? And you're thinking like, no. I mean, yeah, but, right?
The risk of conviction is never zero. It's never zero. I don't care how innocent you are. It's I watch these trials, like the George Zimmerman trial, the Rittenhouse trial. That's really my area of expertise, is use of force trials. And I consult on a lot of trials. And I see trials where there's literally zero evidence inconsistent with self-defense as a legal conclusion. There's zero evidence against self-defense in a case where the state actually has to disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. They literally have nothing. And every time it goes to the jury, I'm like, I don't know what the verdict's going to be. Because juries are crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because so if
I know what the verdict ought to be.
Correct.
But that's a different question.
Well, do you think the system would be in a fair way if it were lawyers that were doing?
No, lawyers suck. Lawyers are terrible.
Robots.
Because here's what I'm
robots.
saying. Yeah. What if? Because like I said, okay. So watch this.
Lawyers are the worst because they're so arrogant. They think they know everything.
Because do you think 12 lawyers could ever come to a one sound decision?
No, of course not.
Unanimous.
I mean, we're by temperament and training, we argue. We argue. That's our job.
It would just be like hung jury after hung jury, right?
Of course, half of them would take even if they didn't believe the argument, they would play devil's advocate and take that side, because that's what we do. I mean, a good lawyer, when he's presented with some legal dilemma, he instantly is evaluating every single argument on the case from every side. I mean, that's the only way to be a good lawyer, because whatever side you end up on, you also have to know what the other side's arguments are going to be, so you know how to defend against them. So we're just lawyers would be the worst. The truth is, our system is incredibly defective, incredibly imperfect, incredibly noisy in terms of delivering anything that normal people would think of as justice. But that said, to my knowledge, it's still the single best system out there.
Well, it's funny you say that with the various sides, and of course, devil's advocate. One question that's always kind of stuck in my mind, and this happened ever since the OJ case, when Cochran, of course, was a district attorney.
Right.
So he went from the DA's office to defense. Yeah, I want to ask you this: what is it
that's a sign of a good lawyer?
Yeah, right. Well, what prompts people to go from prosecutor to defense and vice versa? Well, yeah. We know the money part.
Yeah, but you get shit money as a prosecutor.
But that begs the question, though. How often have you seen a defense person switch over and go to the DA's office?
Well, no, it doesn't happen very often at all. I struggle to think of an example. And let me think if I
unless you're a bad lawyer and you got thrown out of your firm.
No, but it's still prosecutors' office tend to hire young for the most part. They tend to hire right out of law school.
They grab the students.
Yeah, because it's like with children, you can condition them to play the role of prosecutor. You got to be a pretty hard MFer to be a prosecutor, because it's a weird dilemma. Most of the people all of them really, let's be serious, virtually everyone you're prosecuting is a criminal. I mean, that's just the nature of the game. But you're also how can I put it? I mean, the pressure the prosecutors put on defendants to fold to plea bargains, threatening them with unbelievable, unjustified criminal charges. Like, you're going to be spending the rest of your life in prison if I put you in a trial, so you better take this plea bargain for 5 years or whatever. And the person's probably guilty of something, but not life. But you're threatening them with life to get them to take the plea bargain, because that's what's most efficient for you. So you need a certain kind of temperament to be a prosecutor. I've never done it. I don't think I have the temperament for it. I think, and being a defense attorney is in a sense a cleaner position, because also when you're a prosecutor, you're supposed to be seeking justice, not just a win in court. You're supposed to be doing the right thing. Wow. To my mind, when you're a criminal defense attorney, I will cheat every chance I get on behalf of my client, because it's a state it's the state's burden. It's not my burden. They have
Correct.
to prove my client guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I think criminal defense attorneys are entitled to cheat, and the state's not. And that's a dichotomy that I think is appropriate given the power the state has, which is essentially infinite resources.
Yeah, they have an unlimited budget, right?
Yeah.
Like
Do you
they
guys
can just
see a
go
lot
after
of older prosecutors, like in their 50s? Because I struggle. Like, I think of all the cases I've seen, the prosecutors look like they're 40s, maybe at the most.
But it's like a McDonald's. There's a couple managers, and then there's 30 or 40 people working for minimum wage. I mean, that's how most prosecutors' offices. There's a few senior. Of course, there's the elected district attorney or attorney general or whatever of that district. But they don't usually really try cases themselves. They're more of a boss figure. Then you have a lot of assistant district attorneys, ADAs. They do the real trial work. And among the ADAs, you'll have, it depends on the size of the office, but you might have 5 or 6 people who've been there forever. They're just civil servants, basically, like if they worked on motor vehicles. That's just their job. It's going to be their job their whole career. And below them, you have 60 people who are under the age of 28.
Yeah.
Oh.
Legal researchers and clerks and...
Oh, lawyers. All the assistant DAs going to court are very young.
Okay, yeah.
For most cases, if it's a murder case, if it's a killing case, you'll see a more senior prosecutor take over. But
now that you said, I have noticed that. Like even like I said, the OJ thing with Marshall Clark is like, if you go into, it doesn't matter what your so-called offense is, but like you said, anything other than like a serious crime, right?
Yeah,
it's
like
usually a younger
case.
ADA, right? It's like, you're like, oh yeah, you're like, you look over, you're like, I mean, is this person even 30? And here they are, like, trying to present whatever to the judge. They're fumbling and stuff. I'm like, wow.
But we have a lot of crime. You don't need a very good lawyer. Frankly, most prosecutors don't need to be very good. We have a lot of crimes today that are easy convictions. They're possession crimes. They're drugs, or they're guns, or they're child. I don't want to say because I don't want to get you stricken on social media, but you know what I'm talking about. There's things where if all they have to do is show you're in possession of whatever the contraband is, and you're convicted. That's by the way, a lot of these, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of, you might notice if you take a look that a lot of high profile female prosecutors, their entire career is based off possession cases, which are cakewalk cases.
Easy.
They're not hard cases. They're easy.
Yep.
The cops did all the work. They caught the guy with the drugs.
Yep.
I mean, you don't have to do anything as a prosecutor, or child cases or illegal gun cases. It's these are no brainer. You can't lose those. You'd have to be an idiot to lose them in court.
So, but in those cases, they still say they still offer plea deals and all that. And like, is that just because
no?
Do they normally?
Sometimes, but they don't have to. They can just get the
convictions. A slam
dunk. They tend to offer the plea deals when it's going to be work. When they're going to have to work to get a conviction.
Okay.
It's going to take effort and resource. If they can get a win, if it's like a locked-in win, they want that. They want most prosecutors. Their conviction rates at trial are well in excess of 90%, mostly 95%. Federal level, it's 98%. You go to trial, you're getting convicted, and that's not just because they're good lawyers. I mean, a lot of them aren't that great lawyers actually, but it's because they get to pick the cases they bring to trial. If your favorite sports team got to pick the opponents have played, they'd win 98% of the time too.
True.
And they get to brag. That's how think of them as being professionally graded that way. If they can get a case that's going to contribute to that 95, 98% conviction rate, they'll take it to trial. Sure. Why not? That's good for them. If it looks like it's going to be work and risk, they don't want to take a case to trial that's going to be hard to win unless there's some political motivation, but those are
like
are
Rittenhouse.
Yeah, right.
That was politically motivated. It's funny you mentioned the pressure to take a plea deal, because in Canada, we actually, the police can do the same pressure in the interrogation. So we don't have any rules around, if you ask for a lawyer, you have to stop questioning or anything like that. The police can lock you in a room for 6 hours and grind you down mentally, get the confession, and it's all admissible in Canada.
I'll have to take your word for it. I don't know anything at all about Canadian law.
That's the one difference because Drex, Ken Jennings, he's analyzed our serial killer cases.
Yep.
And he was shocked because he lives in Florida, right? He was shocked that we put Michael Rafferty, who was convicted of killing an 8-year-old, abducting and killing an 8-year-old girl. They locked him in the interrogation room for over 6 hours. and just they'd switch detectives, and they just kind of ground him down until eventually.
Yeah, I mean, we do similar things here. It's I don't know about 6 hours. That's a long time, but I mean, cops are, especially detectives, the guys who become detectives. They're not dummies. They're smart. They, you tell them, all right, these are the constraints you have to work within, and they'll work within them. But they're clever MFers, and most of the people they're dealing with are idiots. I mean, most
and they are
most
allowed
criminals
to lie
are not
too.
Of course, here in the U.S. as well, they can lie all day.
They can say, "Oh yeah, we got you on video. Why don't you just confess? We got you on video
all day long." Yep.
Now, Branca, that begs the question: a guy like you watch something like First 48. What is your takeaway from when you watch something like that?
I've actually never seen the First 48.
Oh, really?
Have you seen Abducted in Plain Sight?
I'm in the real world, so
yeah, I know, right? Like, well, one of the main things about that show that it's like a narrative thread that runs throughout it is basically what you said. These are some dumb fucking criminals, bro. Like dumb, like lowest garden variety criminals. We're like, bro, what are you doing? And like, they're committing crimes like obvious crimes, right? With help, so that people know what happened. So then that person starts turning state's evidence on them. They did it on Facebook Live, and you're like looking like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? Like, why are you such a bad criminal?
Right. Well, most of them have multiple prison sentences already. I mean, this is it's almost like a lifestyle choice. They're just not good at this, or they're good at being bad criminals, I guess I could say.
It's funny, we just learned about one in law class today. A guy wanted to kill his wife, so he doused the car in gasoline and planned to smash the car and have it light on fire, and then he would get out of the car while she burned inside. I don't know. Obviously, that didn't go according to plan. Instead, he ended up killing his 2 young kids by mistake.
Oh.
Because when he smashed the car, he got knocked unconscious by the steering wheel, so the wife got out, but the car burned.
Oh.
So the kids died in the back, and then he survived. So it was an interesting set of facts because he was convicted of transferred intent, first-degree murder.
Sure. Yeah, we would have the same doctrine here in America.
Yeah. So it was a really interesting case. But Drex, like, there are many ways to off your wife. Mm-hmm. That is probably the worst one I've heard yet.
Stupid.
Right. First of all, I would recommend against that.
I mean, let's
not be offing any wives.
Take it to Italy.
Andrew, you've been married before, right?
I've been divorced before, man. I've done the whole thing.
So I'll just leave it at that.
I didn't kill anybody.
Well, I got to ask you this though. So, Branca, you talked about you were married before, right? And this is the craziest thing. It worked.
I was the classic sucker. I was the classic, late 20s simp sucker, doing the proper thing. It's the time of life to get married.
We'll talk about how to. Okay,
I walked into it like a mouse walking into a trap.
Well, let me ask you this though: what was your mindset on each time? Right. So like I said, obviously you were conditioned, right? You were conditioned by the blue pill mindset going in. Like, Andrew, this is just what you do, right? You're out of career. Right. Now it's time to get married. Because I've heard. Do you know what's funny? I've noticed a lot of guys are like Gen X's, and like even baby boomers and stuff. They talk about this social pressure they felt to be like. Basically, your life had to go like this, right? Just kind of like stages, like this stage, that's it. So they ended up getting.
I got to be honest. I didn't feel like it was pressure per se. It was just the normal thing you do. You go to elementary school, then you go to junior high school, then you go to high school. Then you don't feel pressured to go to high school. I mean, it's just normal. Mm-hmm. To me, it was all right. You get a job and you're making a living, and you can support yourself and pay a mortgage. It's time to get a wife and. You meet some gal who says, "Make me your wife," and it just seems like the normal progression in life. Mm-hmm. But at that age, with what I knew, or more likely didn't know, there were red flags everywhere. But I was just completely blind to them.
So let me ask you this though: there's going to be people that are going to listen to this, and they're going to say, "Man, I've been hearing about this Branca guy. He seems great. He got it right."
I am great.
Yeah. He's a great guy. But they're going to say, "I heard about." That he got it right the second time. But give guys an insight into the mindset that leads you to make that critical error the first time versus the mindset that gets you to get it right the second time.
Yeah. So for me, the biggest critical error is the first time where, first of all, my wife was substantially older than me. She was 7 or 8 years older than me. So she was in her mid-30s.
Oh,
Now we know mid-30s is like,
done.
Not just
Wall.
hitting the wall, but you smash through the wall.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're done.
And I'm sure she was thinking, this is my last chance to have kids and all that kind of stuff. And I was a young, upcoming professional. I was making a good living. I could be reasonably be expected to make a lot more money moving forward, which of course is in fact what happened. And she just, and she was still very attractive, very fun in bed. And to a young guy, it's like, oh, golden, right? I'm in. Let's get married. Let's have a couple kids. That's what I'm supposed to do anyway.
That's what sucks in the military, guys.
But now I can see that, of course, what actually happened was she had 35 years of trauma that she brought to that relationship. She was never normal, and there was no way it could possibly have worked given that circumstance. She was effectively a broken human being, and so. We had the couple kids within a couple of years, as you might expect. She's 35; she's got to have the kids right away, which was great.
Yep.
I'd love my kids, but as soon as we had the kids and she was done having kids, her interest in me was zero.
Oh,
completely
zero.
Yeah. So
Damn.
now I was in a circumstance where I was like, all right, I'm in Massachusetts. I know what the family courts are like in Massachusetts. The marriage was dead. I mean, I stayed in that marriage for a decade after it was dead because I was fearful that if I tried to get divorced, I would lose custody. I would lose all access to my children. And they were
how
the most
bad are the laws in
thing the world for me.
Massachusetts? I'm curious. Like,
oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's a
I mean,
complete
because there's lots of places where people are like, yo, man, Branca, it's really bad here. Give us an idea of how a typical case goes in Massachusetts.
Typically, the wife gets everything. She gets 100% custody of the children. The father gets court raped on child support and alimony if you've been married more than 10 years. And the guy's left destitute, living, if he can afford it, in an apartment or his car. And the wife is just having a parade of boyfriends go through her bedroom with, a 3- and 5-year-old in the house. And the father never sees those children.
Well, because he can't really afford to either, can he? Because you know what I'm saying? Because like if he's paying alimony, child support, all that, can he really afford?
He's ashamed. He's living, if anything, he's living in a shithole apartment, so he doesn't want to take his kids there.
Yeah,
he feels like a loser. None of us get married to get divorced. Mm-hmm. So for me, divorce was
men don't get married to get divorced.
To me, that's what I mean, of course. But to me, divorce was a huge personal failure, and so it's the risk is very, very high. But I'm a smart guy, so I managed my divorce very, very carefully. Basically, my wife had one of her issues was spending. She had to spend money all the time, and we were both making a very good living. But I said, "Listen, I'll give you all the money. I'll give you everything, the house, everything. I won't take a penny with me, but I want joint custody of my kids. As long as we don't argue about that, you can have everything." And she needed money, so she took that deal. And so it was a very uncontested. Right.
That's how they see it. I mean, you know this. Like, I mean, you heard about 50 Cent's baby mama, right? 500 grand a year, but she's broke now and homeless.
Well, part of my deal was she took everything, but I didn't owe her anything moving forward. So we had joint custody of the kids. So
that's right.
There was no child support and there was no alimony.
Yeah.
So I got out free and clear. I was 40 years old and I was dead fucking broke. Dead broke. As broke as I was when I was 18 years old. Damn. I had nothing.
Damn.
But I had an ability to make more money.
Correct.
So I let her take everything. I got joint custody of my kids, ordered by the court. And that's all I cared about. And ultimately, that turned out great because I could, in fact, make more money. And ultimately, my kids moved in with me full time. Mm-hmm. So I got effectively 100% custody. Beautiful. And so I made the best of a bad situation. But when I met my current wife, I was 40. I was fucking broke. I was a baby daddy with 2 little kids. She was 25 years old in graduate school, beautiful, every opportunity in the world. For some reason, she decided she liked me. And I still made her wait 5 years before we got married. I was like, nope. I've been through this. You have to basically prove to me that this is not going to be another psycho arrangement. But she did. And it's been the last 12 years have been, since we got married, 16 years since we met, have been the most magnificent of my life. I can't imagine being happier. In fact, I tell people that my greatest fear is that every morning when I wake up, I open my eyes, I'm like, all right, am I in an ER or coming out of a coma right now? Because this life is too good to be true.
Now, I got to ask you this, though, Andrew. So what you described has happened to plenty of men, past, right? In days past. But what is the biggest red flag on one side versus white flag on the other? So what have you seen in the new wife that made you go, this is the reason why she's a keeper? Whereas in the old one, the red flag made you go, oh shit. Like this is when I should have gotten out. Versus, I should have gotten out here versus this is why I should get in.
Biggest red flag, which did not apply to my circumstance, but the biggest red flag, guys, if it's a baby mama, run. Mm-hmm. All right, maybe if you want to date her, but do not get into a serious relationship with the baby mama. You will always be second at best in priority after her kids, and probably after her kid's daddy. So don't get involved with a baby mama. If that's not an issue and it wasn't for me, the next biggest red flag I would look at is simply age. If they're over 25 years old, they are run through. They are from the streets. And
the damage.
And they have the trauma. It's not that they had sex with a lot of people per se. I mean, I had sex with a lot of people. I don't care about that. The trouble is with women, when they've had sex with a lot of people, it comes with a lot of trauma.
Yep.
They are profoundly. It's not like with guys. Guys will have sex with women and it means nothing to them.
Nothing at all.
It can be a masturbatory exercise. And sometimes it can be that way for women, but not all the time. Generally, women want some kind of emotional connection with the man they're having a relationship with. And if it just turns out to be a one-night stand, the guy goes there, it's a pump and dump, she takes it personally. It's emotionally scarring. And if she's been doing that for 10, 15 years, that is an enormous amount of damage that you are taking on without even knowing it, because it's not visible unless you're aware that simply exists because of her age and life experience. So if they're much over 25, 26, just know I'm not telling you not to do it. I don't tell people what to do. Just know you're taking a substantially bigger risk.
Yeah, well, though, from what we've been hearing, shout out to my girl, J Love.
By the way, I should have a caveat here, and that is, of course, there are women who are, they might be on the dating market when they're 30 or 35, but it could be because they're widows, right? They were married and their husband died in war or cancer or whatever. That's a different case because they're not run through. They were
correct.
Right. So.
Yeah, well, I bring this up because, my girl J Love was telling me about her son and how.
Oh shit! I hope I didn't get personal.
Oh no!
Is anybody dating a baby mama?
Oh no! God no! Fuck that! No. So she's a friend of mine, and she told me about, basically her son who's in high school, right? And saying that, I promise you, Branca, no matter, like I say, the red pill truth is the truth, but it needs to get readjusted. When I tell you these girls are damaged and broken beyond repair by like 16 now.
Yeah,
Branca, you got to hear some of these stories, man. It wasn't like this when we were growing up, right? Because the dating apps weren't there. There was all this other stuff. It's so terrible. But I do want to ask you this though.
I mean, listen. When I was in high school, so I went to high school in New York, and when I was in high school, by the time we were juniors, most of us were sexually active, including the girls. When I got to college and I met college-age girls who were virgins, I was like, oh, "What the hell is this? This can't be." But even in high school, they generally had a boyfriend.
A boyfriend.
They had a boyfriend they were with for 2 years or 3 years. They were having sex with that guy. But what they weren't doing is running up a body count of triple digits by the time they graduated high school.
Correct. Now,
it's the body count that causes the trauma. It's having the sex without the emotional connection that causes the trauma.
Because if a girl was sexually active, right, and she had 1 or 2 boyfriends, right, so then you meet her at, let's say, 23 years old. She's like, yeah, I had a boyfriend at 17 to 20, and then I had a 1-year relationship, and then he cheated on me or whatever the case may be, right? It's like, okay, yeah, that happened, it didn't work out, but like you said, her only body count was the relationship body count, which is, like you said, that's different from swipe right, dude came over, blew my, headboard, cheeks clapping, and then like you said, the guy just goes like, all right, yeah, cool, and then she never hears from that guy again. Now, I do want to say this, though, Andrew. when you were you talk about, after your divorce being 40 and broke, at your lowest point, right? This is, after the divorce immediately, and then the kind of like, the little, maybe a couple of years after that, right? What was your mindset to rebuild, to like, be like, hey man, I'm going to get through this. This is what I need to do. What did you what kind of led you to really step up?
Well, I got to be honest. I never had to change anything. I mean, I've always been raised with a very powerful work ethic. I mean, I was working, when I say I worked as a diesel mechanic as a young man, it was a family business. My grandfather started it in the 1930s in Harlem, New York, fixing tires on a street corner. He was a poor Italian immigrant. And him and his brothers built a mechanic shop out of it and then a truck sales business out of it. My father inherited that, so to speak. And so we all grew up working all the time since we were 10, 11 years old. And you didn't have to like it. You just had to do it. You got up in the morning and you went to work and you just got shit done. There was no, it's not like there was pressure, like you're a failure or anything, but there was always a way to get the job done. You just had to be smart enough and savvy enough and hardworking enough to do it. That was our view of the world. So I've never felt like I couldn't succeed. I mean, I've just never felt that. Of course, there are things I can't do, right? Like I can't dunk a basketball, and I mean, we all have our physical limitations, but there's always some opportunity there. And if there's any opportunity, there might be 9 out of 10 things I can't do, but if there's 1 out of 10 things I can do, I'm going to run that down, grab it by the throat, and stab it until I can eat it. That's always been my attitude. So even at my very lowest, I mean, the lowest I ever was after the divorce was just I felt bad for my kids. I felt very emotionally bad. I felt like my 2 oldest kids, because I've 2 kids now from the second marriage, which is wonderful. But my 2 oldest kids, you're raising them in a broken household now. And I knew their mother was crazy and I picked their mother. I mean, that's on me. Right. So I felt responsible for that on an emotional level. But in terms of would I be able to dig myself out of this home and provide for my family, I never had any doubt about that.
Well, I got to ask you this, though, because you were a diesel mechanic. Why law? Like, what caused you to switch over to law?
Oh, diesel mechanic is a young man's game. It was fun when I did it, and it was for a young man. You make a lot of money. It was great. I mean, I always had cars. I always had cash. It was very helpful for picking up the cheerleaders. That was really nice.
Oh yeah.
But Drex was literally picking up cheerleaders and dropping them.
Yeah. Nick and I were cheerleaders, and we dropped a chick during a wheelchair basketball game because of poetic justice.
Oh.
Yeah, that was something. Andrew.
But I was working as a mechanic in Harlem, New York, and it gets cold in the winter.
True.
And you get to work, and it's a concrete slab floor. It's a 40-foot ceiling for tractor trailers, so all the heat's up at the ceiling.
Of course.
The concrete gets cold. It's ice cold all winter. Your tools are in a metal toolbox. Your tools are all metal. They're cold all winter. It's not a fun job. I mean, in the spring and fall, I guess it's fun. In the summer, by the way, Harlem is like 110 degrees.
Yeah.
And so for young men, it's fine. But I certainly knew I didn't want to do that in, when I was 40. I didn't want to still be working on garbage trucks in Harlem, New York in that summer heat and winter cold. Law school, I don't know. So I went to college and I thought I was going to be a doctor, like half the kids who go to college. And I did a year of biology, a year of chemistry, a year of physics. And I realized by my 4th year, I was like, oh, shit, I'm supposed to graduate this year. And I didn't have enough of a concentration in any one major to actually graduate. So I opened up that stupid book they gave you in those days. And it's like, what's the major with the least requirements?
Yeah.
And it was English literature. So I graduated with a degree in English literature, but you're not making a living doing that. What you can do is you can take the LSATs and go to law school. So to me, it was just like, at the same time, I was applying to the NYPD. So I was just pursuing everything. I thought I had an opportunity. I got into law school, did reasonably well, got out, and it turned out I have an aptitude for being argumentative, I guess.
Imagine that. No, I gotta say this though. So Branca, what is the biggest changes that happened that you saw in your practice and in society since you started law? Like just like the way people view gun control and self-defense and all that. What changed in your mind?
Oh, the biggest change with respect to guns is just how much more liberal it's gotten. So I was raised in New York, and then after law school, I moved to Massachusetts. I spent 25 years in Massachusetts, and those are pretty powerful gun control states. Although even in Massachusetts, you could get a concealed carry permit. I lived in Massachusetts for 25 years. I had a concealed carry permit for 25 years in Massachusetts. So once I was an adult, I always had a gun. I carried a gun on me. I carry a gun to this day. I'm carrying a gun right now for personal protection. If I'm awake and I'm lawfully allowed to be in possession of the gun, I probably have a gun on me. I mean, you wouldn't know. I look like an old dude wearing a sweater, but there's probably a pistol on me someplace.
Yep.
But what I saw in most states, you couldn't, when I started all this in the early 90s, most states, you couldn't get a concealed carry permit. Even Texas, you couldn't get a concealed carry permit. It didn't exist. So the biggest change for me is just over the last few decades, how effectively now every state has some provision for concealed carry. There's 5 or 6 states that still make it more difficult than it needs to be, like most of California, some of New York, New Jersey. But most of the states, getting a concealed carry permit today is easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And it not only should it be that way, it should be even easier. There ought be no permit requirements at all for a mentally sound, law-abiding American citizen to carry a gun on their person in public. None.
So, Andrew, there was a recent, I think it was a Supreme Court case that kicked it back down to the, I guess the Superior Court level, regarding New York's permit process. Was that for open carry or concealed carry?
Yeah, well, it was Bruen is the name of the case, Bruen. I believe it was for concealed carry, but it hardly matters because New York prohibited both, really, for most practical purposes. But yeah, Bruen basically said, hey, the Second Amendment in American law is just as valid as all the other amendments. The Second Amendment was the only one that was treated like the poor stepchild, the redheaded stepchild. Any of the other fundamental civil rights under the U.S. Constitution, to infringe them is a big effing deal. The Second Amendment, they just walk all over you. They treated it like it was somehow different than the other amendments. And Bruen basically said, no, it's the same. The threshold you need to meet to infringe someone's Second Amendment rights is the same as you would need to meet to infringe their First Amendment rights, their Fourth Amendment rights, their Fifth Amendment rights. And that's a very, very high threshold. So that's all Bruen said is, hey, the Second Amendment's not a lesser amendment. It's got the same authority as all the others.
Well, hell, we're looking at now I would say first and second are the things that come up the most, right? And when it comes to the First Amendment, right? I'm doing a show. I can't remember if that was a show that you were on. Yeah, I think it was, right? And I said something like, yeah, my theory about autism. Everyone's like,
Yeah.
Every fucking thing you say, someone's like, oh, you can't say that. Wait a minute now.
Right.
What is your take on, like you said, okay, so, you need this high burden to infringe, right? Allegedly, versus
right.
what is
right,
reality.
The way we're doing it now is that the technology has co-opted the constitutional structure. So, of course, obviously, when we were founded as a nation, there was no internet, there was no social media, and what the founding fathers were most concerned about was the one entity that could potentially have the power to do it would infringe your speech, would censor you, because private entities couldn't really do that. Only the government could potentially have the power to do that. And they would do it by holding you criminally liable for things that you said. They put you in jail for things that you said. There would be forbidden speech the government would classify that they could hold you criminally liable for. But there were no private entities that could do that. That was unimaginable to them. But now we live in a world where all the censorship is not done by the government. It's done by private entities. It's done by social media. And frankly, the First Amendment doesn't cover private entities. It really only covers governmental entities. Now, I would suggest there's a lot of cooperation between the government and these social media companies. So I would argue that, in fact, the social media companies have become agents of the government and should be treated no differently. But nevertheless, we're living in a novel period in which they're able to get away with this kind of thing. And part of the reason they're able to get away with it is because we have these weird rules. We have like these rules that say, hey, so when we invented telephones, right? Telephones are brand new. What the hell do you do with a telephone? No one's ever seen one before. What if someone says something defamatory over a telephone? Well, if they said something defamatory and printed it in a newspaper, you could sue the newspaper for printing it because the newspaper made a decision to print that defamatory statement. But if you say something defamatory over a telephone line, the telephone company had no control over what you said over the telephone. So we said, all right, listen, there are things that are publications that have editorial control, and there are things that are just communications channels where you're not making any editorial. We're not telling people what to say over the telephone. So we're not going to control the telephone company. We're not going to hold the telephone company accountable for what people say at a telephone, because the telephone company is not making any decisions about that content. The newspaper is, so we can hold them accountable. Well, social media, because of their political influence, got themselves classified as basically telephone companies. So you can say any shit you want on social media, and they're not held accountable. They're treated as if they were a telephone company. They're not responsible for the lies or defamation or anything else you say. They ought to be treated, in fact, as a newspaper, because we all know they make editorial decisions. They ban people. They ban content. There's things they won't let you say. But we're living in this weird lying state, this false reality, where we're pretending for legal purposes like they're the telephone company while they're operating like they're the newspaper with editorial control.
And so that was what President Trump did when he directed the Department of Justice to look into it. They were looking at, because CDA, you're talking about CDA 230, right? Communication Decency Act, the protection against liability, which is it's a blanket protection, right? All causes of action are off the table due to the arising from the content moderation decision.
Correct.
Yeah, they're actually thinking about bringing 230 into Canada. We currently don't have it, and they want to add it. That's dumb. Anyways, but
the devil's in the details.
Of
course.
The other argument has always been, Trump said, well, if you're making moderation decisions, if you're curating the content, then you lose the 230 protection. You should lose it.
That's the only reasonable position, right? But the social media companies don't like it because they want the legal protection and the ability to be editorial.
Yeah. Is the de facto public forum argument going anywhere? Last I heard, that actually was still stuck in the Supreme Court.
You know, if we get very technical on the law, you're going to be outside my area of expertise. So I'm just making general observations. I don't claim any particular expertise in First Amendment law, or I just,
I mean, it's a shopping mall example, right? You can't kick people out of your shopping mall, even though it's technically private property, because it's a public forum for all intents and purposes.
I'm not sure how they do it in Canada, but in America, it's much more complicated than that. So malls can prevent people from. Yeah,
we have that at the Mall of America, right? I mean, if you
can't hand out pamphlets, you can't do things.
Correct.
But a lot of this is also state controlled. So, like at my local supermarket, they'll put up signs saying, "Hey, those people outside handing pamphlets, they're not there because we want them there. They're there because we can't do anything about it." So, but again, that's not my area of expertise, so I can only comment on general observation.
Now, Branca, I got to ask you this though: when it comes to a lot of this, like you said, the censorship, the big tech, trying to get in and trying to control narratives, one person's name that comes up quite often is someone like Andrew Tate, right? And there's a huge double standard on his deleting, which of course, similarly happened to someone like Nick. But Andrew Tate, I think, is kind of different because it's like Andrew Tate is just saying, like, he's not like okay, Nick was alleged to have said something which he didn't say. But with Andrew Tate, they're basically going like this. He's saying bad words. He's saying things I don't like about women. And now what's funny is they cheer when Andrew Tate gets deleted off of everything, right? But then someone goes, now, wait a minute now. What if the pendulum swings and then the people that you like are no longer allowed to speak, right? Because these people never think that far.
Yeah, but they don't believe that'll ever happen.
They never believe it'll happen, right? They'll just go, oh, no, it'll never happen. Now I want to ask you this, though. When it comes to people like Andrew Tate, Branca, if you're going to sit there, we got so many Andrews tonight. When it comes to someone like Tate, though, right? And he says, yo, this, he says, I think he basically got deleted for saying what you've always said, right? Which is after a certain age, except for rare exceptions, these chicks are just done. Because he was like, yo, they've had a whole lot of dick run through them. And they're like, oh my God, that's wrong.
Right. So that's probably the real reason. I think the nominal reason was that I think a video was released that appeared to present him as being violent with a woman. It turned out they're just kind of role-playing sex stuff. So it was not non-consensual at all. But it was sufficiently bad that it provided the kind of the fig leaf of an excuse to ban him. By the way, I will say this. I never heard of Andrew Tate until they banned him. I had no idea who that guy was.
Streisand effect.
Yeah, Streisand effect. So now I know who he is.
That's wild.
Or even Alex Jones is the more the more well-known example.
Mhm.
Like, he got thrown off of everything the same day.
Right. So I've never seen an Alex Jones show. I mean, I know him
I've only
only
seen clips.
by what people say about him. I just work all the time, really. So all this other stuff is very incidental to me. But I only hear about these guys when something like what happened to Andrew Tate happens, or what happened to Alex Jones happens, and so they're actually just bringing these guys to my attention.
Now, when they're in that attention, right? And I want to ask you this. It's kind of like the forbidden knowledge, right? And we talk about Greek mythology, things like that. When you try to take something, right? We think about like early Christians, right? When you try to take something and you say, this is forbidden, and we're going to really come after you for seeking it. Throughout history, Branca, what do people tend to do when you persecute them for wanting to know something that's forbidden? Do they tend to just go, okay, that's cool, I'm just not gonna go seek it then? Or do they do something different?
Well, unfortunately, the truth is that most people just concede the point. Most people do. Most people are sheep, and they just let it go. What tends to happen is there's something like 5% of the people who are like, no way, MFer, I'm going to punch you back in the face twice as hard. Not physically, of course, but intellectually speaking. But we're the minority. Everyone likes to think they're a critical thinker and they're looking at things objectively, but that's not true. Most people don't actually operate that way.
No.
They're just lying to themselves. They don't know they're lying to themselves, of course, but you just observe their behavior. They're actually reacting to the world emotionally. They're not making decisions or observations from first principles. They're making it based on whatever information is being exposed to them on the TV or the internet or the newspaper. So if you control that, you control what the range of decisions they can make, right? If you only show them options A, B, and C, they never know that option D, E, and F are even available, right?
Correct.
So they just choose from the options you make available to them. And that's just the way normal people work. That's why through all of human society, human society has always been controlled by the top 5 or 3% of the population, pushing everybody around. They were monarchies or they were whatever. And now it's our social media and political elites attempting to do the same thing. They're people like Hillary Clinton are just attempting to recreate a monarchy. That's all. And they know that most people, if she can push herself into that seat on that throne, most people will just let it happen.
Now, I got to ask you this, though, Branca. What do you think makes people so fucking weak? Like they're born and they're just like,
No, because it works. I mean, being strong takes energy and effort, and it has a lot of cost associated with it. And risk, right? Going along with the system, you're more likely to have a positive outcome that's well below your maximum potential, but that's safe. So you'll get along. You'll never make as much money as you could have. You'll never have, all the options you could possibly have. But you also probably won't be put into a concentration camp, for example. You just go along with the system. I mean, that's what most people do. If you want to be a rebel, there is a high risk and high cost to being a rebel, to fighting, to actually speaking truth to power. That's that's a high risk gambit.
It bothered me growing up because I dealt with this when I was in sports, where I saw shady coaches trying to do shady shit, right? And I remember kind of looking around at my teammates,
being human beings, you mean?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm looking at my teammates like, you guys are gonna allow this shit, and they're just kind of like, well, man, I don't want to risk my scholarship, but I'm looking around like, are you? Oh shit!
But that's exactly the point, right? Yep. They don't want to take the risk, and you can hardly blame them. I mean, for what? What's the upside for them? Doing the right thing? I mean, what does that mean?
Well, but here's the thing, though. I'll tell you what bothered me. It was on a deeper level. I used to think of it was like this. It wasn't about what a coach was doing or whatever was doing. It's about you as a person. Because I was thinking to myself like this. These are the kinds of people, and you've seen these people, right, Branca? If someone just offered them 1 cent more to betray you, they would betray you because they don't have any fucking values. You see what I'm saying? So that's what bothered me. I was like, wait a minute. This kind of goes to how Nick got himself in trouble. And I've always said, I was like, look, you can tell me right now that a school is going to push some pedo agenda bullshit. If you say, so Drex, this is okay, right? No, it's not fucking okay. And no, I'm not going to allow it to happen. But when I look around, and Branca, this is true. You go look around to your left and right, you're like, anybody going to help me? Anybody going to do anything? Who's
going to stand up? Who's going to stand up?
But Branca, you've noticed this in your life, right? a lot of times you're basically you're one of, if not the only person doing. You're like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. There are X amount of kids going to this school, right? That means there's X amount of parents, right? And you're telling me it's like me and like 2 other people that are actually, I'm talking like actually going to do, I don't mean like sending an email like, oh, I think this is inappropriate. And then they say, this is what we're going to do. Okay. I'm saying people who are going to really go out there and go, yeah, this is not allowed, right?
Yeah. So
it's like,
so in my experience, what tends to happen, what I tend to do is I'm the kind of person who would stand up and take the risk, but then I'm also putting my family at risk. I'm putting my kids at risk. The schools don't like it. Now that my kids are identified in the school as being associated with a troublemaker parent, right? I don't want to put them at risk. So what do? I decide, you know what? I'm going to go out and make more money. I'm going to make more money and have more options to go to a different school where we don't have to deal with this bullshit. And I leave that environment. Mm-hmm. I have the luxury of doing that. I feel bad for the parents who don't. I mean, most people don't. They're stuck there. And then they have to make that difficult decision about whether or not they're going to be stand up and take all the arrows. Sometimes they win. Most of the time, they just don't win. And everything continues the way it was. Sometimes they lose, sometimes catastrophically, like Joe the plumber. I mean, all these people who suddenly they were normal people, suddenly they have a high political profile. Listen, I'm just a small town lawyer who does legal commentary. I get death threats all the time. I get people threatening to burn my children alive. Who wants that? Nobody volunteers for that.
You know, I'm gonna be honest with you, Branca. Let me tell you what my response to that is. Try it then. That's been my response since I was a kid. Like when someone threatens me, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Try it. Because I've had people threaten me, and I'm like,
oh yeah, no, I don't worry about it. They never show up.
They never show up because here's the thing. You've heard this, right? Like it'll be someone like fat ass Lizzo, right? You guys don't understand how hard it is being me. I get that. Lizzo, no one's gonna delete you. I promise. Right?
Yeah, no, like I don't really worry about it. I'm not
fucking need an elephant gun to take her out.
Oh yeah, well look, armor piercing bullets don't get through all those layers of fat, so nothing's gonna happen to Lizzo, right? But Branca, here's the thing though: whatever happened to people saying, then try it. Throughout my life, I remember growing up around a lot of people who would say that. They were like, if you threaten them or oh, wait till after school, Branca. People were like this. Go ahead. What's good? Yeah, and then people were like, so then people knew even from that young age.
People like you that guy? I learned very early that the best solution to wait till after school is to be behind the school when school is over. I am right here, MFR. Let's do it.
Yeah, because nobody showed up. The same people.
Well, sometimes they did. Listen, I got my ass beat just like everybody else, but they had to pay a price. I got my punches in too. Yep. I was a high cost victim. You wanted to bully me,
and that's the thing. Like, but Branca, that's why I want bullying back. Because here's the thing.
Yeah.
When a person is everybody out there who says, "Oh yeah, Drex, you don't understand. I was bullied as a kid," because you deserve to be bullied. The only people who are bullied on this earth or abused or whatever fucking term you want to use, it's because they deserve it. Do you know how I know they deserve it? Because they sat there and went like this when it happened the first time, right? Like, watch this. I have a daughter. I'm sure you have a daughter, right? If no father ever tells their daughter, "Hey, honey, if a guy ever smacks you in the face, just that's okay. Just go ahead and say, just apologize. Say, oh, that's okay." Because then what's he going to do? He's going to become emboldened to do it again, right? And same thing you would say to your son. If you were having a family dinner with your son, Branca, and a chick got in his face and smacked him across the face, you're going to say to your son, "You should definitely stay, son, because that's the right thing to do." Now you're like, no, this shit's over. You see what I'm saying? You allow that to happen. Listen, when you allow a behavior to occur more than once, what you're saying, anyone out there who says, "Drex, I don't agree with what you said, that's wrong," okay, then watch this. Branca, when you don't like something, do you keep going back to it over and over, or do you get the fuck out of Dodge, right? You say, "Oh, no, I don't like it." Like whether it be food, whether it be places that you go. Yeah, if I say,
it depends if I'm in a position of strength. If I'm in a position of strength, I say, this isn't happening. This just, we're not doing this.
Look,
if
man,
I'm not in a position of strength, I just leave.
Always in the position of strength. I tell people, look, man, because do you know what the position of strength really boils down to? It's a mindset, right? If someone wants to come, like I've always said, there are people out there that are scared of every single thing. "Oh, Drex, I'm afraid that someone's going to say something bad about me. I'm afraid that if I date a white girl, my mom won't like." Listen, this is no lie, Branca. I've seen people pick their partners, right? Whether it be marriage, dating, whatever, right? Yeah. Based on the social pressure within their family, right? Like certain biases. I'm like, look, dude, I'm not going to not date someone because someone says, well, you can't bring an Asian girl home, Drex. Watch me. Because what's someone going to do, Branca? Right? What are they going to do? The most they can do is, we're going to disown you. Okay, deuces. It has nothing to do with the girl. It's not being a simp. It's like this. You're not going to dictate my life. Now, if you see a girl that's acting crazy or something, you're trying to check me like, hey, man, do you see these red flags? But if it's just based on she's that religious denomination,
so
she's that color.
Do you differentiate between dating outside your race and marrying outside your race? Are those two different things in your mind?
Nope. The only thing I ever see is the principle. Like, what characteristics this person has. Let me explain why. What bothers me the most about these nationalist fucking simps that are the most useless vessels on the planet, because all they do is talk about color. They don't see anything else. They always talk about leftism, right? But they're doing the same thing. Like, I need more white babies. Or, the white man is evil. White man devil. I need to have more black babies.
Southern.
Yes, yeah, like a Lauren Southern. It's just like,
have more white babies. Wait, who's her husband, Drex?
Right. So my observation isn't that political or hierarchically racial, but so I mean, dating, who cares, right? You're banging whoever you're banging. I mean, whether I don't care what race it is or what gender it is, or whatever makes you happy, it makes you happy. But I do. It's been my observation that, listen, marriage is hard already. Yep. There's lots of difficulties already, and the best of circumstances. And I do sometimes observe in various mixed race couples that the mixed race aspect can add additional complications and difficulties.
It does.
And I know a couple who are very good friends of mine, and they're both wonderful people. It's a white gal and a black guy. But they tell me all the time about the various shit they take from family members and friends, because I mean, it's terrible.
Hold on, Branca.
But it's real. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's appropriate. But it's a real additional pressure on their relationship.
Branca, not that they take, that they allow themselves to take. Because let me give you an example. I go to a barbecue or something with a white girl, right? Someone talks out of pocket, right?
Right. So do black girls give you a hard time when you show up at a barbecue with a white girl?
They would if I ever acknowledged black women.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. So the way that my family works is like this. It's the reason why I stopped dating, right? One of the reasons why I stopped dating was because I just got tired of listening, like getting all these questions. Because here's the thing, you know how aunties work, right? They always want their nephew to get married, right? Are you gonna marry this girl? How long you known her? Tell us about her. It's like, can you just calm down, just sit down, and just shut the fuck up? Can you do that? Because now you know this is true, Branca. Uncles don't care, right? They're like this. Hey, pleasure to meet you. They're just kind of like they're watching the game, right? They're like, sitting back having a beer,
as she walks away.
Yeah. They're looking at it like they're only going to acknowledge is she pretty or not, and is she nice to you?
Right.
They don't care about anything else, right? Nope. Damn, it's a pretty girl. Oh, where'd you meet her? Yeah, cool. You like her? You know everything's good. Cool. And they're right back to watching the game, right? They don't care. It's the women pushing all that, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Now, based on that logic,
it's always the women.
it is but Branca. But once you're kind of in that it's its own primordial soup, right? Where it's like this certain level of like wicked consciousness kind of enters the fray, and as you listen to this bullshit, you're kind of like, I don't have to deal with any of this, right? Like I've known this since I was middle school when I started dating. I let people know. In the rare cases that anyone ever sees who I date, because like I said, I just don't like dealing with family members, the female family members, right? Because what ends up happening is that they look at it as it's an affront to them, right? Like, why did you have to pick a non-black woman? I always remind them. I remind all black women why I don't pick black women, right?
Oh.
And I go like this. It's because of you. You are the reason I don't pick black chicks, okay? Because you're terrible, okay? You're the least married demographic for a fucking reason, okay? And when you say these things, and they go,
I would suggest they're all terrible.
No, they're all terrible, but some of them just. Here's the thing, I was talking to Marv about this earlier, right? And he was trying to say, I don't know, Drex, white chicks are worse. I said, look, here's the basic thing. This is how it really boils down. Black chicks are just the worst at hiding female nature. That's the only difference.
That could be.
All women are the same. Branca, you can go all around the world, right? Women want the same things all around the world, right? And if you ask the local men, what do they say? Man, they're fucking crazy. That's why if I go to Colombia, I go to Brazil, and I go, damn, these women are bad. Man, she's so nice. And I go, wait a minute. If I thought with the big head for just a second, okay, if she's so amazing, how is she single at 27, right? She's not a widow. Why is she single? So if I start asking the dudes around, hey man, tell me about Mariana, right? Tell me about her. Man, look, she pulled out a knife on Jose this one time. She tried to chase a dude in the car another time. She thought, look, I saw a story. This Latina, only Latinas do this crazy shit. The Latina went after the husband and wanted to delete him, right? Because, they're quick with that blade, right? Do you know why? She saw a picture of another woman in his wallet. Now, on the surface, you say, well,
he's probably banging her.
Oh, no, Branca. Do you know who it turned out to be?
Listen, I when I worked as a diesel mechanic, everyone I worked with was a Hispanic guy, and they all had a gun in their tool chest.
They had to protect them from the women.
They were all banging other men's wives.
Other men's wives, and they knew. They knew that shit could jump off, right? But in this case, the woman in his wallet was her. It was his wife when she was younger and hotter.
Yeah, right.
She's that insane. But my thing is this. You're in these positions, right? And this kind of goes into your self-defense. I want to ask you about the fact that what is the best and worst case that you've seen when men are in these positions, right? So you're in a self-defense case, right? Someone was forced to use lethal force. What is the situation that you've seen is the best possible scenario for your outcome and then the worst possible scenario? Because you said to yourself, you don't know, 10% chance, right? Once you go to a jury, it's like, anything could happen. But what are the situations that you've seen you go, these are the best scenarios versus the worst?
So, of course, the cases I actually work on are cases where people are they're facing felony charges and they're looking at 10 to 20 years or life in prison. So I'm the part of that is just I'm expensive. So I only get brought in on the most serious cases. So, but the truth is, when I look at those cases, 99% of the time, there were a lot of off-ramps off that highway to using deadly force or threatening deadly force that those people should have taken before they got there. If they'd engaged in better decision making, they would never have needed to hire me, and I'd have one less costly German motorcycle as a result. But they just needed to make better decisions, and the better decision is, folks, the fight you don't get into is the fight you've won. That's the best way for people like us to win a fight. You see those red flags going up, don't stay, man. Just leave. Listen, if you're a dude, that woman, you may think she's some kind of angel or some special creature. She's a human being just like you. She's got a liver. She's got a pancreas. She has an anus. She poops in the morning. She's just a human being. She's not that special. She's just not. There's 3 billion more like her out there. You see those red flags go up and you have a reason to think things could get physical, just get the F out, eject right now. Just go. Next week, you'll have another one.
You know what, Drex? You know who's never died in a bar fight that got out of hand and became a knife fight is someone who's actually been punched in the mouth before and knows that a stupid bar fight over nothing is not worth it.
No, listen, nothing's worth it. Nothing's worth it.
I've carried a gun every day of my adult life. And if I was in a bar and someone insulted my wife, you know what I would do? I'd say, leave. No worries. I would just walk out.
Yep.
Take my wife, walk out. And that's all good. Unless, of course, they actually try to harm my wife. And then somebody might get shot. But that's going to be the absolute last resort. And it's funny you talk about people getting punched in the face because just given the nature of my job, I know a lot of police, and some of them work in police academies. And 20 years ago, they used to tell me something I couldn't believe was true. They'd say they would have recruits come to the police academy who had never in their lives been punched in the face or punched someone else in the face. And I'm like, well, how do, are we allowed to curse?
Oh, of course you are. Yes. Fuck it.
How the fuck are these guys supposed to deal with actual bad dudes who will rip your head off and shit down your neck? How are they supposed to put on a uniform and a badge and deal with actual bad dudes who fight for fucking breakfast since they were 7 goddamn years old, and they've never punched someone in the face or been punched in the face? It's ridiculous. But you know what I hear today from my friends in the police academies? They have recruits in the police academy who have never been yelled at.
Wait,
they've never been yelled at.
They stopped doing that in the military. Drex, did you hear about that?
Fuck? They were raised by mamas.
God!
And they're never a man in the house. No one has ever yelled at them. Their parents were a mother. Their teachers are women. No one has ever yelled at them. And now they're expected to go out in the street. And man, if you're a dude who's no one has ever yelled, I'm an old small town attorney, I will beat your ass. Your guy has never been yelled at?
Well, Branca, let's face it. Now, I've talked about this whole feelings thing, right? I have an issue with feelings, and it's one of the reasons why I don't ever like acknowledging the existence of conservatives, because they're the most useless and worthless people that have ever walked the fucking earth, because they simp for the police unapologetically and indiscriminately, right? The police are right in every single case in the mind of a conservative, until they delete a white woman, like Justine Demond. And then all of a sudden now, oh, whoa, hold on now. Now, I want to ask you this, though.
I will say there are some weird cut conservatives who are very anti-police. David
I've
French
never met one.
Freedom Convoy.
Yeah, no. There are
Freedom
a few
Convoy
who
did that too a lot.
And I think it's a weird psychological thing where they're how can I put it? I don't mean to be offensive to anybody. They're so super fucking white that they feel like they have to be extra non-racist. So when a cop does something, they're like, "Oh my God, the cop must have done it wrong because there was a black suspect." And some of these people are like former federal prosecutors, and they're people you think
those
better.
ones are insufferable.
But they're kind of. It's like a woman who's definitely not a virgin being super protective of virgins.
Right?
It's a weird psychological dynamic.
But Branca, this is what bothers me so much about the whole feelings thing, especially when in regards to police officers, is that a police officer can draw his gun and delete you by saying, I feared for life. I felt. Yet a citizen cannot. What do you think about that?
Well, there's two facets there. So the actual black letter of the law is pretty much the same for police and civilians. It's not really very different. But the soft part of the law, the human part of the law, tends to treat police differently because they swim in different waters than the rest of us. For example, I'm not expected or allowed to initiate physical force. If I do that, I'm a bad actor. I'm the aggressor. I lose self-defense. But we hire police specifically to be people who initiate physical force. We ask them to do it all the time. Every time they make an arrest, they're initiating physical force. Mm-hmm. We want them to chase down bad guys. I'm not supposed to chase down a bad guy, but a police officer is. So we treat them differently in that sense because our societal expectations of them are different. But the truth is, a police officer whose only excuse for shooting someone is, I had an emotional feeling of fear. Well, listen, I would prosecute that guy. That's not a legally sound basis for using deadly force upon somebody. And by the way, I would suggest increasingly in our modern society, the last five years for sure, all that kind of benefit of the doubt that cops used to get is exactly the opposite now. There's just if a white cop uses force on a black suspect and the black suspect dies, all the presumptions are against that white officer. And that's no more which more
is unfortunate
than the reverse.
Correct. Yeah. And I've always said that. I was like, here's the thing. There have been cases where, when someone asks me, hey, Drex, what do you think about this? I'm like, the cop is in the right. And then you ask me another one, the cop is in the wrong. You see what I'm saying? Like I'm being fair. And one of the things that bothers me, though, is that, like you said, there has been a paradigm shift. But, I mean, there's this thing I have, Branca. I have an issue when Tim, we showed the video, right?
I mean, here's something I always catch up on, and that is I don't see a lot of cases where a suspect is actually compliant with lawful police orders and gets seriously injured or killed by a police officer. I just don't see that happen. So I always get, well, give me an example.
The infamous hallway incident.
Yeah, okay. That's a great example. I'm glad you brought that one up. That guy got shot. And by the way, this is a case of what I would call a lawful but awful shooting. It's not a good outcome. That guy should not have been shot. But what happened was he was getting conflicting orders from different police officers who were not well coordinated. And one of them was saying, basically crawl forward on your hands and knees. And the other one was saying, show me your hands, show me your hands. Well, when he crawled forward on his hands and knees, his pants were falling off.
Yep.
So he reached down to pull his pants up. Well, to the other officer, that's a suspect who they had reason to believe had a gun. That's why they were there. It was a man with a gun call. That was a suspect reaching for his waistband where a gun would be found. And that's why he got shot, because he reached for his waistband. Now, did he reach for his waistband for a gun? No, he was reaching for his waistband to hold his pants up. But the officer who fired the shot did not know that. Mm-hmm. He perceived a different circumstance than we see in the aftermath. So I can see a rational explanation for why that guy was shot, consistent with innocence for the officer. That's not to say it was a good outcome. It was not. And those officers, listen, should there be civil liability? Absolutely. Should they have been better coordinated? Should that not be allowed to happen? Absolutely. But for criminal liability, what we're asking is the cop who pulled the trigger, what was in his mind at the time? Mm-hmm. And if you're being held at gunpoint because you're a man with a gun call and you reach for your waistband, you're highly likely to get shot.
Now, hold on, Branca. Now, this has always been my criticism of that, right? When he reached down for his pants, I'll never forget when Nick showed me the video. This is what bothered me so much. He's surrounded, though. So where's it? For the sake of argument, right? A guy goes like this and reaches for, because his pants are falling down, right? But you're surrounded, though. You guys have the training.
Let's imagine he was actually reaching for a gun. Let's pretend he had a gun in his waistband. He's like, I'm taking one of these fuckers with me. Yep. And he's reaching for that gun, and he's going to get that gun out. He's going to fire a shot at one of those cops. Actually, the cop in front of him was the cop who fired the shot that killed him. I'm going to kill that motherfucker before I go. Mm-hmm. Because for all the cops know, that's what's happening.
Could happen. No, Branca.
Well,
do you know what I said? Do you know what I said when I saw that? This is no lie. I talked to Nick about this, and I said, and when Nick goes like, Drexel, how would you have handled this? I'm not a cop, right? But if someone asked me, hey, Drex, what would you have done? I remember sitting there when I saw that video, I said, what you should have done is while he's surrounded, you go like this. On your knees, hands on your head. I'm going to send someone over, right? Because he's surrounded, right? Send someone. Don't make any moves. Just hands on the head, on your knees, right? Just sit there. Don't worry. Don't panic. I'm sending my guy over to come, pat you down, put the cuffs on you, right? So you can't move, right? Now the person's incapacitated. Now we can stand him up if need be. You see what I'm saying, Branca? Because he's already like this. He's on his knees.
I 100% agree. I couldn't agree with you more.
Guns drawn, walking
in. What you're making is a policy argument after the fact. What should have been done collectively. What we're asking in terms of criminal liability is that wasn't in place. That wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. That's not what the officer who fired the shot was
I get that. But here's the thing. But Branca, should it have been different? Should the policies you're describing have been in place? No question about it. Absolutely.
But they see it's one of the complications when we're talking about these cases. From my perspective, I'm always thinking, all right, what's the criminal liability? Mm-hmm. Should we take that cop and put him in a cage for the rest of his life for this? Or what we're really talking about is a failure in policy and training. And I think clearly it was a failure in policy and training.
These cops are horribly trained. Like, you remember when Tamir Rice got gunned down. You're talking about a 12-year-old boy.
All right, that's another great example. He was 13 years old.
13.
Not that it makes a big difference. He was a 200-pound 13-year-old. Mm-hmm. He was
he looked like Andy Reid.
He was a big kid. And that was a man with a gun call. The cops were responding. By the way, he was walking around a park, Tamir Rice. And again, this is not a good outcome. I'm not happy Tamir Rice is dead. This is a tragedy that a mother's child was killed. It's not a good thing. It's an awful outcome. But for the cops who were sent to that, they were called because Tamir Rice, 200 pounds, there's a picture of his mom holding up his pants. They are big pants. He's walking around a park pointing an apparent gun at other black people, and they called the police. They're like, there's someone walking around this park pointing a gun at me. Can you please send police? And it was a toy gun, but it didn't look like a toy. I've seen the photos. It looked exactly like a 1911 .45 caliber pistol that I carried for 20 years in Massachusetts as my personal defense weapon. He had taken the orange tip off it. It looked exactly, in fact, the police chief in Cleveland, who was a black male, said it was indistinguishable from a real weapon. Mm-hmm. And when the cops rolled up, what Tamir Rice did, they said, stop. And he reached for his waistband for that weapon. They could see the grip of the weapon in his waistband. And that's why they shot him. They didn't know he was 13. Mm-hmm. No one told them that. All they knew is there was a man with a gun call. He was pointing a gun at people in the park. They rolled up. He reached for an apparent real gun in his waistband, and they shot him. It's terrible. It's awful that it happened. but it's not unlawful, and it's not hard to understand why it happened.
Yeah, well, and you know, though, it's funny you say that, because I was talking, I can't remember if it was to Nick or whatever, but I remember talking about this case to somebody, and I said, there's a lot of things, you know, at play, right? Obviously, you know, we talk about how, you know, gun manufacturers, I mean, it's a toy gun manufacturers, right? We had brought up a lot of different things, and also the nature of a call, because Tim, we've talked about swatting, right? Yeah. And the reason why, you know, Branca, you've heard these stories, right? You can get deleted while getting swatted. Do you know why?
Yeah, right.
Because they come in hot, because based on the information they have,
right? Of course,
they're like, oh, well, because you start to see the problem, right? So the problem then is that chain of communication, right? Branca,
right. So what do you propose? What's the solution?
You know what I want? Attempted murder. Swatting is charged as attempted murder.
But that's after the fact.
That's after the fact.
That should be the consequence.
It should be, because Branca, when you are,
it is attempted murder. There's no.
When you're SWAT, right? When you get that call that, hey man, there's a hostage situation, you are assuming the absolute worst, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, guys got hostages and stuff. Okay, well. In the Tyler Burris case,
he's cutting people up with a machete right now.
Yep.
You have to get in here. He's chopping children up with a machete right now. You got to get in there right now.
You know, I find it funny that these people like don't know. Like, it's like if someone gave you that call, Branca, isn't there a part of you thinking like, how are you seeing all this, right? Like, you got binoculars across, like, but you see what I'm saying? Like, right, how do you know?
So it's part of it is we've all played the telephone game, right? Where you're at a party and someone whispers something in your ear, you whisper it to someone else, it goes through 12 people, it comes out the other end. Part of the problem is someone makes the call, it goes to a dispatcher, right? In a room with computers. She hears the information. She knows the information she's getting is garbage. It's imperfect. I mean, no one's giving her perfect information ever. And then it goes through her brain, to her keyboard, and she transfers it to somebody else, who maybe transfers it to somebody else, who maybe gives it to the responding officers. And by that time, we're 3 or 4 chains down the links down the chain. And those officers know they're getting imperfect information, but they can only respond based on the imperfect information they're getting. I mean, I often hear people say, hey, if I'm involved in a self-defense shooting, I've shot and killed someone, maybe, and I call 911, I had to defend myself. Do I give them my description so they know who the good guy is? And I'm always like, actually, that makes me really nervous, because most of the time when cops get responding officers, lights and sirens, all that, when they get a description, it's normally of a suspect. It's not normally of the defender. So their brain, even if it's correctly communicated to them, their brain may process it completely differently.
Well, he's armed, right? In their minds, like, there's an armed guy.
Here's the guy to look for, right? The guy with the red shirt, the description you gave.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That's such a scary thought, because, and I want to ask you this. I got to touch on it briefly with you last time, but I want your take. With the purge law coming up, there's going to be all kinds of calls coming in, right?
Good luck, Illinois. Good luck.
Hey, Branca.
You instantly know it.
Branca, we need to talk about the purge law. So
my wife heard about that, and she started rubbing her hands together. She's like, we could use a vacation home.
That is savage. Branca,
it's terrible.
What do you think about it?
But it's going to drive so much crime and so much.
It is going to be
much business. For us.
Do you want me to tell you who I think is going to get deleted the most? Like I said, gangbangers. That's always been a thing. Do you know who I think is going to get deleted the most? Baby mama drama. Because think about the kind of guys.
Times.
No. So Branca, when Tim and I talk about HMT, shout out to my man RPM.
Almost all the
it's gonna be domestic.
Almost all the victims of urban violent crime are black people, and they're normally completely innocent black people.
Yep,
it's terrible. I mean, this tends to be covered in such a racist way, like it's black people are coming at the white communities and killing all these white people. That's not what's happening.
No,
criminals aren't that smart. They rob and kill and maim and rape the people in their own community. Is what happens, and unfortunately, it's mostly completely innocent black people. It's awful, but that's what's going to happen in Illinois. Is when we hear about the shootings in Chicago, it's never 12. University of Chicago white students were gunned down. It's a bunch of poor black kids were gunned down, and that's what's going to happen in this purge. And it's just I don't know. And the people passing these laws are mostly white people, liberals, of course. And I'm like, can't you see how horribly racist you're being?
No, but you know, But Branca, I don't believe that this is like some experiment. It's some woke policy. I believe it's something much more sinister. And I believe all of this is just one big fucking ruse to gain government power. Because this is what's going to happen. Purge law. All right, we're not coming after people unless it's first degree, right? So you get to just no bail, right? You commit a crime. You remember how New Orleans was with the 60-day murders. Remember that?
New Orleans has been and is a shithole my entire life.
Your whole life, right?
Yeah, right?
I mean, but remember though, if you go around around the French Quarter,
there's like 2-3 blocks in New Orleans.
Yep.
You can walk safely as a tourist.
That's it.
During tourist hours.
During tourist hours
right.
on around Bourbon Street and everything, going to Cafe Du Monde, getting your beignets.
Yeah.
Right. You've been there.
You go 1 block off that?
Off the street.
Oh my God.
Done. Oh, Memphis is no different.
Drake,
Memphis is terrible. Oh my God, I would.
Here's Beale. The cross street, Florida, right? Florida is the cross street of Beale Street. Branca, when you were in Memphis,
if you see me in Memphis, I've got 3 guns.
Oh yeah. Look. with the body armor, right? With the Kevlar. Like, I told somebody, I go, dude, Memphis is a rare city where it feels dangerous. Because think about it, Branca, you've been in places like I said. Okay, prime example, Chicago. If you fly into Midway, not O'Hare, if you fly into Midway, you're right next to the city, right? You go like this. You're right in the city. I can't remember if it's the Brown Line or whatever, but you're right in the heart of downtown. You go like this. Damn, look, I'm in downtown. Downtown Chicago does not feel dangerous. All of the violence that you hear happening is primarily in the neighborhoods.
Outside. Yeah,
it's in the neighborhoods, right? So, but when you fly into Midway and you are in the city, you go, oh yeah, this ain't bad. Look, I took an Uber from Midway directly to Brookfield, Illinois, which is where the Galloping Ghost Arcade is, right? Shout out to the Galloping Ghost, top 10 location on Earth. And I go over there, Branca, and I went like this. Yeah, there's a couple of characters, but I felt safe, right? You go to Memphis, you felt danger, right? Like you got there, you're like, holy shit. You could feel it, right? You could feel that funny, presence.
But in my experience, it's the most liberal, progressive cities that are the most racially segregated.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. When I lived in Boston has, it's very wealthy college kind, university kind of town, Harvard, all that. And I went to Harvard. It's beautiful. Harvard's great.
Oh, of course it is.
It was fun to go to. I really enjoyed my experience there. But in Boston, you have Dorchester and Roxbury, and those are the Black communities. And 99% of the Black people in Boston live in those 2 communities, and the rest of the city is lily white. And it's almost like it's apartheid-like. It's like you go 1 block, you're in that other neighborhood. So
absolutely.
White people don't do that. There's no reason Black people can, except maybe they think the police will give them a hard time. I don't know, but Boston is unbelievably the most segregated city I've ever lived in, and it's one of the most liberal cities in the country.
Well, when someone says liberal, I just know segregation. If you come to Minneapolis, same thing. I mean, it's like that.
Yeah,
all
I made
the
that
time.
mistake. Drex, I'll give you a little bit of context first. So Calgary, we have like 40 murders a year. Half of them are DV, the other half are gang. Right? We see in the newspaper. Known to police. Yeah, that was gang.
Right.
Yeah, the victim was known to police. Yeah, it was a gang hit. So the very first time I found myself in downtown Minneapolis, I'm at the Target Center, Drex, and I had some time to kill before the Dick Show came into town to do the downtown show. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna walk around a bit. I crossed the LRT tracks, going east side. Yeah, see, Drex knows. Andrew, I was there 5 minutes and I was like, oh, I have fucked up. I'm turning around and going back.
No. You got to know better. Here's the thing. Nick said this happened to him when he took Lady Rackets to, I think he was in Miami. And he said, like, that was the first time I've been downtown. I felt like, man, this place is dangerous. Like, there are places, man. And the reason why I say that the purge law is such a big deal is that, so Branca, think about this for a second, right? Purge law. Crime skyrockets, right? Innocents are who. This is how sinister I believe this law is. It is the innocent non-gangbangers who are going to get deleted, right?
Yeah,
getting robbed and deleted. So someone goes, well, Drex, why the hell would the government want to do that to their own citizens? I know why. Because when they do that, as you said earlier, right? People are always scared. They're insecure. And what do people do when they're scared and insecure? Weak sheep turn to the fucking government, right?
Daddy government.
Save us, Daddy government. Save us. And then you know what they're going to do next, Branca? And here comes the red flag laws. Here comes we're just going to take all of the guns.
Yeah. Maybe.
I can see it happening.
I mean, it could be. It could be simpler than that, too. And I think a lot of these liberals, so if you're a liberal prosecutor or a liberal politician, you don't have control over whether some 15-year-old young black male decides to shoot a drug dealer competitor on the corner, right? You can't stop him from doing that. You can't control that. You have no influence over that. But what you can do is you can say, all right, I have control over whether that kid gets prosecuted and gets sent to prison for 20 years. So I'm going to prevent that bad outcome from happening to that kid. So they control the things they can. They mitigate those consequences for those offenses, but they don't think it is mitigating the consequences. They think of it as giving a break to a young black man who deserves another shot, and blah, 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 because that's within their control. And the negative consequences that come with that decision, they don't bear, because they go back to their equivalent of a gated community.
Correct.
And they're not the ones getting robbed and raped by these. And I think I've heard you talk about it, but it's not that these young black men are insane. They're raised in a certain environment where they're incentivized to engage in certain behavior. If I were raised in that environment, I'd be doing the same goddamn thing. If I were sent to a school where I was not ever educated, I was released from that school functionally illiterate, functionally innumerate, and my only way to advance myself was through getting involved in a gang, I would do that. Yep. That's my path.
Because survival and success is one of the same, right? You survive first and then you thrive, right? No one thrives without surviving. So
I get to thrive through an education kind of mediated environment because I got educated. Honestly, what's being done to many black communities in the educational system, I characterize it as educational genocide. We are destroying generations of black people, black families, by simply not educating them, not equipping them for a modern world. And I don't know how to fix that because
that's
the
by
liberals
design.
Control all those schools.
Well, look,
but if you take a young man who's vibrant, powerful, strong, and he's reaching his maturity, he's feeling all that testosterone, and if he's educated, he'll go become the world's best car salesman or whatever. But if he effectively can't read or write, and his path to getting money, women, power, respect is working in a gang, well, fuck, that's what I would do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've always talked about this. In a post-apocalyptic world, right? The educated guy can sort of thrive a little.
Right. You need like 3 of them.
Yeah. But
right.
we all know
like
when.
Right. You need a doctor. You need a guy who can work plumbing, and you need, I don't know, like 3 of them. The rest of the time, you need people who can kick ass.
You need savages. Like you need some dudes out there that have no problem being a neck breaker, right? And the reason why I bring that up though, Brock, is that like, so we talk about with in a certain society, and obviously, we know who's raising these horrible fucking kids, these ratchet ass single moms who are government funded. What do you think about
that's a whole other problem. This whole matriarchal society we have now, this whole feminist matriarchal, it's a social cancer. If you're a feminist in 2022, you are a social tumor on human civilization. I'd say no offense, except I completely mean the offense. So
we mean the offense here.
We mean it. Well, and I got to ask you, though, Branca, what's coming next is, we hear this all the time, right? In terms of they're going to take our guns. What is your take on that? I mean, you talk about self-defense. What do you think about the whole taking the guns?
I don't see it. I just think in my lifetime, we've gone from like 3 or 4 states that had concealed carry rights to basically all 50 states have some version of it. I don't see that reversing, especially as society gets more violent. I mean, even the women now are like, fuck, I'm not giving up my guns.
Okay, so Andrew, think of a country that's not the U.S. that just recently banned
I don't care then.
gun sales.
Oh, Canada, right? Yeah. Sorry, no offense, but I couldn't care less. So that's up to you.
I know. We're about to get a lot of Canadian expats heading down to the States because
if they're allowed in, I wish we could take them. I'd love to have them.
Oh, yeah. I think you'd love Alberta.
A bunch of well-educated, productive adult human beings who like guns. Yeah, I'll take all of them.
But Well, we got. I'm sure you remember Runkle of the Bailey pop
Yeah,
in.
no,
On the
I know,
shows. Yeah.
I know Ian very well. I have a lot of
Okay.
respect for Ian.
Yeah, it's a bit that we don't have self-defense provisions here in Canada. We do. It's just you have to do it with a shotgun or a hunting rifle because it's almost impossible to legally be allowed to have a handgun in a self-defense situation.
I get it. Yeah, I've ridden my motorcycle into Canada from the U.S. and they took it completely apart. They're looking for that gun.
Yeah. Oh no, I get stopped too because Brown, being Indian and whatnot. They tear my shit apart too. They think I'm pulling drugs across. But anyways, you guys are so lucky. You really are, because in Canada, if someone walks up and just knocks your teeth out, you just have to take it.
Wait, what?
Because look, if you get into a fight, there is no it's not an absolute defense, it's an affirmative defense. You got to go to trial. You got to get arrested, you'll get charged, right? If someone just comes up and smacks you in the mouth and you turn around, it's like, oh no, you're going down, motherfucker. And you put them down, you get arrested, you get charged.
Well, everybody in America should assume that'll happen here too. If you use force against another person, you should. One of the most common questions I get is, Andrew, what can I say to the cops when they arrive in the scene to not get arrested? I'm like, I don't give a shit if you get arrested. Get arrested. It'll be a fun experience. I mean, in the short term, it sucks. But 10 years from now, it'll be a funny story you tell at cocktail parties. I don't give a shit if you get arrested. Now, who hasn't been arrested? I care whether or not you spend the rest of your life in a cage. That matters to me a lot. But arrest,
but you can get to that same place by just not hitting back and just taking the punch.
Well, hold on, Tim. Wait a minute. Except
a pretty good indication that someone's going to punch you a second time is that they punched you the first time. So
true. I'm going somewhere with this. It's that there's no incentive to fight back, and that is the effect of a culture that does not prioritize self-defense gives you zero incentive to fight back against anything.
And anyone who thinks America has a generous self-defense law should really reconsider that position, because it's not that way. You may get lucky and get that kind of break, but you shouldn't count on it, because it's not up to you. The moment you get in that fight, the moment you go hands-on in that fight, the rest of your life is out of your hands. Yep. It's in the hands of a prosecutor, cops, a judge, a jury. Maybe you'll get a good outcome. Maybe you'll spend the rest of your life in a cage, but it's no longer up to you. Might it be modestly more favorable than in Canada? Sure. But if it goes bad for you in America, you still end up in a cage for the rest of your life. So what I would tell people is, listen, don't be getting at the fights you don't need to fucking get into. The fight you don't fight is a fight you've just won. There are circumstances that are worth the risk of dying in a fight, of being put in a cage in the rest of your life, right? I'd rather be alive in prison than dead outside of prison. I'd rather die in a fight than have my wife raped or maimed, or my kids raped or maimed. There are things worth dying for, but there's not a lot of them.
Hold on, Branca. I got to ask you this, though, because I was going to ask Tim about what happens if you hit Trudeau. Yeah, I was going to ask you, Tim. So what about if Trudeau gets hit? Does he just sit there and take it?
Well, he's got security.
First of all,
he's got security.
First of all, you know that Sophie's hitting him from behind every night.
Oh, of course. Now I want to ask Andrew this.
By the way, if I could afford security, I would definitely have security.
Oh, of course.
Awesome. It's the greatest thing in the world.
I would love a bunch of big giant guys around me to do the damage. That'd be awesome. I'd just sit back, drink a beer, watch them.
Well, Andrew, is that not what gangs primarily do, Drex? It's protection.
It's always been protection. Protection. It ended up morphing into narcotics and all that. That came later, but that was not the initial goal. That's why when you watch things like Scarface can work for any nationality because it's the immigrant story. But now, Andrew, when you talked about the home invasion, right? I got to ask you this: what happens to these places? You've heard these insane laws, right? Where someone breaks into your home, and there's all these you've heard these weird stories, right? Like, you're not allowed to use deadly force. Wait, what? What is your take on that when you hear some of these places?
No, if someone forcibly and unlawfully enters your home, you can do almost anything you want to that person. It's very hard to screw that up.
We've heard different. You've heard those stories, right? The whole someone broke in and then like the person defended and oh no, you weren't allowed to blah 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 blah. It's like, well, wait a minute.
That would be very uncommon. Well, listen, if someone's walking out of your house, then they're no longer a threat to you. So I'm not saying it's impossible to screw her up, but it's possible. If someone broke into your house and they're walking out, isn't that what you want? You want them to walk out, right? I mean, I would let them walk out. I'm not shooting a guy in the back that's just vengeance. That's not protecting yourself anymore. And if he has my TV, fuck it, I can buy another TV. I'm not shooting. I'm not shooting anybody over TV.
You don't have to buy anything. Insurance,
whatever. I'm not killing somebody over TV. I'm not going to do that. I don't. It's just not that important to me. I mean, I live in a very traditional house, right? It's a 2-story house. All our bedrooms are on the second floor. If it's the middle of the night, I hear glass breaking downstairs. I'm not going downstairs. I'm calling the cops. I live 5 minutes, 10 minutes from the police station. I'll call the cops. I'll wait upstairs. Now, when I'm waiting upstairs, I'm at the top of my stairs and I've got an AR rifle.
Of course.
If they try to come upstairs, it's going to get really loud and flashy and they're not going to like that one bit. But I'm not going downstairs. They're not allowed to come upstairs, but I'm not going downstairs. They can steal all the shit they want from the first floor of my house until the cops show up. But that's just stuff. I don't care about the stuff. I care about my wife and I care about my kids. And of course about me a little bit.
Well, how much discipline do you think guys need to really understand? Like, what would you tell a guy out there that like doesn't fully understand his rights and self-defense and how it works?
Just keep in mind the consequences. If you go downstairs, you could fucking die. They could kill you. They could win that fight. What is on the first floor of your house that's worth dying over? And if you win the fight and you kill them, a prosecutor could decide he's going to put you in front of a jury, and there's a 10% chance you end up spending the rest of your life in a cage. What's on the first floor of your house that's worth spending the rest of your life in a cage? Anything? So just think it through. Don't do that. Think about what's important. What's important about defending your life, the life of your wife, your kids. Who cares about? Now, listen, I get it. People say, I bought that stuff. I spent years of my life earning the money. It's my life, literally, is what made me able to buy that stuff. And they're taking it from me. It's like they're taking my stuff. But listen, if we lived in a country that let you shoot people because they were stealing your stuff, and there is one state that does that, Texas allows you actually to shoot people over mere personal property. If you jump through all the hoops, I don't recommend it, but technically it's a possibility. But if we lived in a country that said, hey, if someone's just like stealing your TV, you can shoot them and that would be lawful, I wouldn't tell people not to do that. That's up to them to do that. But we don't live in that country. We live in a country that says if you shoot someone simply over a TV, not because they're threatening you or some other person, they're going to put you in a cage for the rest of your life. And you don't want to do that. That would suck.
What a rough scenario, because like I think there are so many, you said earlier, right, about evading situations. The reason why I've never been to jail is because I'll say something that I learned a long time ago, Branca, was it was having that foresight, right? You know how you could pick up on energy in a room? Like, you ever been in a room and you're
I actually have
there,
a phrase for it. I call it the maturity of foresight.
Right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
We all see kids. Any of us who have kids, we see our kids, they'll take a glass of juice or something and they'll put it on a table like 49% over the edge of the table.
Yeah.
And we see it and we're like, well, we fucking know what's going to happen. It's going to tip over and spill and make a big mess that we have to clean up, right? Kids don't see that because kids don't have that life experience. But we have the life experience, and that applies to real world human interactions. We can't allow ourselves to be surprised by completely predictable events. And if you're in a dangerous environment, you need to know you're in a dangerous environment and just be more careful and be able to see, all right, these are the ways this thing can go sideways, and either remove yourself from that environment or be particularly vigilant about protecting yourself.
Yeah, it's crazy because, Tim said earlier about like a bar fight and stuff. Branca, I've seen shit jump off before they ever jumped off.
I've been in bar fights. The best way to
I'm
looking like.
Tell them about Tampa.
Oh no, yeah. Branca, no bullshit. Nick invited me to come see Dick and everything for the Dick show in Ybor City. And you know how fucked up Ybor City is.
Yeah.
Ybor City is like the fucking the mecca of ratchetness in Florida, right?
Right.
So flying to Tampa.
Everybody's drunk.
Everybody, like no one. This is no lie. It looked like
it's like the first time they've ever been drunk.
ever. They didn't know what they discovered alcohol in Ybor City, right? Yeah. So I'm down there in Branca. So this was crazy. The night was going well. It was like a fan meetup kind of thing. So like this is long before there was a channel stuff. So I'm just kind of talking to the peeps out there, right? Everything was cool, blah blah blah, right? Then I was like, yeah, man. Well, let me go use the bathroom real quick. In the time it took me to get up from the table, walk into the bathroom, take a leak, wash my hands, walk out of the bathroom, help the old lady who was getting ready to move some stuff, move the bench. And that's like a minute and I don't know, maybe it was somewhere between a minute and a half to 2 minutes in that small window, right? We get kicked out. The bouncer dude, get the fuck out. I'm like, what? I'm sitting there going like imagine this, Branca. In that small window, you're like, it went from everything was cool to why does this dude talking crazy to us, right? And he doesn't want people. and there's Nick. And I'm kind of looking. I'm doing this. Like what happened? I go outside. Someone goes, Drex, you didn't see it? I'm like, see what? Man, in that 2 minutes, a mini brawl broke out and a dude got shanked. I went, wait, what? He goes, bro, you can see the pool of blood right there. Andrew, no lie. I went like this. Sure enough, because you're getting pushed out, right? And when you're pushed, I'm now outside. And when someone said that, you get to kind of do one of these, kind of, go take 2 steps back, to kind of like look back into the bar restaurant, right? I'll be damned. A pool of blood. I'm thinking to myself, who the fuck got stabbed? How did something jump off in 2 minutes? But it goes back to what you said. A lot of innocent people wind up. What if someone pulls out a gun?
It'll take half a second, man.
Half a second, right?
He looked at me weird.
He looked at me wrong, and shit jumped off. And what's crazy is, I started thinking about this. Good thing it was a shank, because usually when someone uses a shank, they usually hit their intended target. Usually,
yeah, a lot.
There's something about you ever notice that when someone pulls out a knife, Andrew, you ever notice that they tend to get the target, right?
Yeah. Well, if they know what they're doing, or they've been to prison. Well, that's the same thing, really. But usually, nobody gets shanked once.
God, no.
You get shanked like 20, 30 times.
Yeah. You don't get just poked. It's not a love tap.
Well, it's a sewing machine. That's generally a non-survivable event.
Oh, absolutely. And what bothered me, though, is that when I thought about that later that night, and this is when I saw Nick with the broken glass, the boss hog, it kind of hit me. I was like, you know what, man? It's a good thing that guy used a knife instead of the fucking gun, because... Branca, I mean, you've heard those stories, right? Someone's like standing there, or in my case, taking a leak. Imagine a dome shot while you're taking a piss, right? You're sitting in the bathroom, not knowing what's going on outside, just, and then pow.
All your friends find you with your head in the urinal. It's
yeah.
What's Drex doing?
Drex is gone. What happened? Well, he went to go check a leak, and in the bullet, it missed the intended target, went through the wall, and deleted him. And that's a scary thought. And I want to ask you this, we'll get you out of here. When you hear about all these cases, right? What is the main thing that self-defense has taught you to kind of like how to see the world? Because like you said, a lot of guys hear someone break in, they say, that's my stuff. And they, go down there.
Yeah. The main rule is use good judgment. Think things through ahead of time. Brainstorm through your head. You read about these events in the news. Someone was attacked, the house was broken into. Just imagine yourself in that scenario. What would you do if you were in that scenario that would be legally sound and effectively enable you to defend yourself and your family? Forget the property. Fuck the property. Yourself and your family. What did this person do that could have been better? What did they do that made them more vulnerable, either physically, tactically, or legally? And don't do those things. Do the things that are more tactically and legally sound. And for most people, it's going to be stay at the top of your fucking stairs with your AR pointed down the stairs and say, the cops are coming. Take anything you want. If you come up here, I'm going to kill you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like that because
how many less people?
But don't go downstairs. Don't think you're some 2022 version of Steven Seagal. I mean, don't be a fool. Make sound decisions. Make well-informed decisions.
how many more people would be alive if they just turned and walked away from a lot of situations rather than running their mouth or, oh, is that person hitting a woman over there? I better go white knight for her.
Well, listen, in the gun community, there's a sizable contingent that I would call the sheepdog community that feels they have a moral obligation to intervene when they see innocent, helpless people being victimized by crime. And there's nothing morally wrong with that position. In fact, it's probably morally superior to my own position, which is it's not my fucking problem. But too often, I think they don't think through the physical and legal risks they're incurring by doing that.
Yeah.
This firefighter, right? All this video we've all seen. This firefighter checked a guy who was being insulting to a clerk in a convenience store, and he's dead now.
Drex, did you see that?
10 minutes later, he was dead.
Which one is that?
This just happened. Nick was talking about it, but a firefighter and another guy are kind of duking it out. Hit the other guy's girlfriend, grabs a gun, and just executes him.
Oh.
Well, the firefighter and the boyfriend are, because Drex, most street fights end up in a wrestling match, right? Because we're not trained fighters. You're not boxers. Most of the time you get into a street fight, you end up on the ground wrestling each other. And that's probably, I actually haven't seen the video myself. I probably should before I comment too far on it. But
I mean, I'm sure I have it. You want me to share it?
Yeah, absolutely. You should have the share.
I mean, I'm on my laptop. So let me just,
you can also shoot me a link. I can share
it. You would have to Google the link. I'm not sure I would have that. But maybe let me take a look. Hold on, maybe I might have put it up on Vimeo.
There's something.
Yes, I have it. I can send you a link.
Oh, beautiful.
If I can.
And apparently, this fight went on for like 10 minutes before the gun was.
Really? Because most fights are a matter of like seconds.
Yeah, but it was a wrestling match. It was just
all right. So private chat. Can I send you the link?
Yeah.
In private chat. Okay. I think that should work. Before you play it, let me because the video is only the very last 20 seconds of the encounter. So apparently, what happened was I'm going to call him the bad guy. I don't know what else to call him, but the bad guy went into the convenience store, asked the clerk for a particular tobacco product, some kind of cigar or cigarillo or something. The clerk didn't have it, and the bad guy took this poorly and started insulting the clerk, foul language to the clerk. The clerk said, "You got to get out of my store. I'm not dealing with you." And the bad guy said, "No, I'm going to keep insulting you." And the firefighter, who would be the victim here, said, "No, dude, you got to get the fuck out of the store. I'm not going to sit here and watch you insult the clerk." Well, the bad guy then went out to his car in the parking lot. By the way, everybody, if you're having like a verbal argument with someone and they leave,
yeah,
you got to get the fuck out. They're not leaving to bring you flowers back. They're leaving to go get a weapon or friends and hurt you. But the bad guy goes to his car, comes back with a gun, a pistol. And then the firefighter starts fighting him for control of the pistol. The bad guy's girlfriend gets control of the pistol. Now the firefighter is wrestling with the bad guy. The firefighter is a big, strong guy. He's getting control of the bad guy. But the girlfriend doesn't like this. And the girlfriend ends up shooting the firefighter.
Also, was it like a side of the head, back of the head kind of thing?
It shot him in the back is how they're describing it.
So she's the shooter.
She's the shooter. I think she actually shot him in the back. But
that link doesn't. The link you sent me didn't work at 404.
Oh, sorry, but
I found this. This should get us where we need to be.
Well, that's an interesting expression. She looks friendly.
That's an unfortunate freeze frame. Drex.
Yeah, that's a bad freeze frame.
Hang on,
sorry, Rebecca.
I fucked up. That was the wrong tab.
What a story, though. I don't know how. I think I know Nick said, but like these cases happen so often in the news.
Sterling and Independence. And that was about 2 Thursdays ago. Witnesses tell us that a man inside of the Liquorland was insulting a woman there, and Santee stood up for her. And then a fist fight started.
Santee is the firefighter who was killed. He's the guy on top here.
cell phone video captured some of that fight between 41-year-old Anthony Santi and 23-year-old Javon
That's the
Taylor.
girlfriend with the gun.
Witnesses tell KNBC the fight may have lasted as long as 10 minutes.
Get out! My kid's in this car! Stop!
Javon Taylor's girlfriend pulled out a gun and ultimately killed Anthony Santi. Now, this afternoon,
That's the whole
Jackson County.
thing.
Yeah, that's the.
I'm glad I didn't see it. And you know why? I'll tell you what bothers me about these kind of cases, Andrew. I'm not even going to talk about good guy, bad guy. You know what I'm going to say? There's too many victims, right? Because like the kids are victims regardless, right? Like if this guy has kids, they witness this, right?
He's got kids. Yeah, he's gonna watch.
Okay,
the
the firefighter has family, right?
Yeah.
He's gone.
Right.
This woman may still face charges. I think it said,
no charges filed.
As
no
of
charges
yet.
Filed.
No,
No,
I don't think they're going to charge her.
Oh, they're not going to charge her?
They're treating it as a defense of others.
Yeah, self defense of another.
Situation.
Because he had the guy in a chokehold.
Yeah,
You saw at the very end he had
he had a choke. Like that guy was. Now here's the thing though. Could she have maybe fired the gun not at him but to scare? Like because
no, Andrew,
can't,
listen,
can't do that.
If it were me, I'd be charging her. I don't believe for a moment that she genuinely believed that her boyfriend was the innocent victim here. The boyfriend went to her car, the car she was in, retrieved the gun, and came back to the fight. He's the unlawful deadly force aggressor. She would be entitled to use deadly defensive force in defense of her boyfriend if her boyfriend was reasonably believed to be the innocent victim. But I don't see how she could reasonably believe that her boyfriend was the innocent victim. He went to their car, got a gun, and came back to the fight. But the prosecutor is one of these, George Soros type, I don't want to prosecute anybody prosecutors, and she's decided not to bring charges. But if it were me, I mean, I don't want to say 100% I would bring charges against her, but 90%. Yeah, 90%. Because I don't believe. Listen, if you think she genuinely believed that her boyfriend was an innocent victim of a deadly force attack, being choked out, and was not the initial aggressor in that fight, if you believe that, she's legally justified. I just don't believe that. I don't believe she had that reasonable perception.
Now, Andrew, can you talk about
feelings are tough?
Can you talk about warning shots? Because I know from every self-defense and. Well, do you watch Active Self-Protection, the YouTube channel?
All right. So John Correa, the guy who runs that channel, he's actually Law Self-Defense, my company, has an instructor program we do for self-defense instructors. John's a graduate of that instructor program, and it's a very high level program. It's the equivalent of a law school semester-long class in self-defense law, and you have to take an exam to pass. John took the course. John passed the exam. He's very soundly educated on self-defense law. That said, he was very anti-Trump, and he and I had a big political disagreement over Trump. So we don't talk anymore. But in terms, right? But in terms of his analysis on these kind of videos, I think it's very sound. So okay. I don't know if he's commented on this one in particular, but John does good work.
I do know in general, because Drex had asked about firing a warning shot. I do know that he is very adamant that you never fire a warning shot.
Yeah, why?
Oh, no. Here's the thing. I'm agreeing. Like I say, as a general rule of thumb, I agree. But here's the problem, though. Because would you agree, Branca? Most cases aren't you're holding a gun while the other person is wrestling with someone else. You see what I'm saying? Like, whereas if someone pulls out a gun and it's 1-to-1, no, don't fire a warning shot. Like, how often are you in these scenarios?
What's the circumstance in which a warning shot would be a reasonable thing to do? So it seems like you have something in mind.
The reason why this one is so unique to me is because so you're screaming for him to stop, right? Now this guy is an idiot for going to the car to go get a gun. Don't get me wrong.
Forget this case. You're imagining in your head a circumstance.
So I'm thinking about cases like this where it's very rare that you are the person with the gun, right? But yet you're looking at someone who is wrestling. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Because that's not often, right? Like you said, usually it's you're
the problem
wrestling
is
for the gun.
when you discharge the gun, you're sending a bullet into space.
Correct.
And that bullet is going to come down. And
I
if
know.
that bullet hits somebody, it could kill them.
Yep.
So if you're on the ocean or you're like in a national forest,
Yep.
and there's zero prospect the bullet would actually hit somebody, okay, well, maybe a warning shot.
Yeah,
would
but
work.
in an actual business district.
But
stuff,
if you're in any occupied environment,
Yeah.
there's a good probability you're actually committing felony reckless endangerment.
Correct.
You're creating a risk of death.
But therein lies the thing. It's like you were saying earlier.
And what's your justification for doing that? Because if your justification was, I thought that dude was going to kill somebody, well, then you should be shooting.
Yeah. Then they say you should be shooting him. It's like it's sad to see this much shit happen. Because like I said, okay, so kids are gonna grow up seeing this this woman with the girlfriend or the mom or whatever, right? They've now witnessed this shit. The firefighter, like I said, his family mourns him. They're gonna want justice, right? Like, you know how people think, right, Brock? If that was like your brother or whatever, and you're like, wait, so what happened? However, I will say this though.
Well, nobody actually pursues vigilante justice. That's only in the movies. Nobody actually.
No. I'm saying just in terms of like they want the system to do something. Like they're gonna be like, what do you mean you're not filing charges? Like,
right, but it won't.
No, but I will say this. Though.
And by the way, that could be appropriate. Listen, I could. For me, the big problem with this case is I haven't heard from the woman. What's her narrative? What did she believe was happening? Because that's what controls here. What was her reasonable perception of events? Did she reasonably believe that her boyfriend was being unlawfully murdered by this firefighter?
But then that's what feelings, right?
If that's what
that
she reasonably believed, then she's justified in shooting the firefighter dead. Even if she's mistaken. Self-defense law, at least in America, it doesn't require you to be correct. It only matters that you're reasonable. You could be mistaken as long as you're reasonable.
But that's
in other words,
because
it's not completely subjective. Your reason doesn't mean any speculative thought in your head. It means you were looking at evidence and making reasonable inferences from that evidence. So, for example, if she knew her boyfriend came to the car, got a gun, went back to the fight, that wouldn't be a reasonable inference anymore, that her boyfriend was the innocent victim of an attack. Obviously, then he's the deadly force aggressor in that attack. But she might say, hey, I didn't see him grab a gun. I was on my phone and I heard him come in the car, but I didn't see him grab a gun. All I knew is, for all I knew, that gun was a firefighter's gun. My boyfriend was fighting the firefighter to keep him from getting control of his gun back. If she says that, and it sounds credible, all right, well, that's one narrative. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't have to be right. It just has to be reasonable and credible. On the other hand, if she knew that was her boyfriend's gun, like say, for example, something that's extremely common, she actually bought the gun for her boyfriend, well, then that wouldn't be a credible narrative anymore. She knows that's her man's gun. She knows her man had to bring it to the fight.
But my issue with this,
but the big problem I have here is that the prosecutor has been completely non-transparent about this. When you have a controversial killing like this, it's very common for the prosecutor to take weeks or months to conduct an investigation and then write a very detailed report, 10, 20, 30-page long report saying, listen, I decided to charge or not charge or whatever. And this is the very detailed explanation, all the witness statements, all the video, everything. So there's transparency to how they arrived at that decision. Here, there's none of that. The prosecutor basically said, yeah, we're not gonna charge her. And that's it. And to me, that's troubling because I'd like to know, because I can see it going either way. And I'd like to know, how is it they arrived at this particular decision?
Well, but Andrew, I'll get you out of here with this because I think it kind of goes back to something that I've said in the past that took a lot of heat, where I said, like, I don't help people, right? Like I've seen people in trouble, and I was like, I ain't doing shit. And let's face it.
Listen, man, I got 4 kids. I got to raise 4 kids. I'm not dying over your ass.
Yeah. I don't know you. I don't fucking know
when I
you.
became an adult, 20, I think I was 22, 23 years old. I went out, got a concealed carry permit, got a pistol, got a holster, learned what the rules were. I adopted what I assumed to be an adult responsibility, which is defending myself and my family against criminal predators. That motherfucker over there could have done that. Why don't they have their own gun? Why do I have to protect them?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because this is a situation where, okay, so now Branca, you've been you've been alive on this earth long enough that you've seen people get into it with each other, right?
Oh yeah,
and get very hostile. But did you yourself try to interject? Like, you can't say that to that. You see what I'm saying? You can't talk to her that way. You need to. I don't say, Branca. I have seen these scenarios.
You mean strangers?
Yeah. Look.
No,
I am
no.
Andrew. I promise you, I'm not in it. I am not. Look. I have been in scenarios where I've seen. Like, remember what I told you? I've seen shit get ready to jump off. Right, where I was like, oh, I don't like the energy. I don't like this vibe. If you've ever been around me, you'll see my body language. Like if I was in there and I saw people getting hostile, if you've ever met me, this is me. Oh, it's getting all right. I'm out. I'm done.
Guess what? The bar 1 block over, they have beer too.
Yeah. Whatever I'm there to get, like if I'm sitting over at a grocery store and I see somebody getting very hostile, and especially if I've already paid for my shit.
Oh man, I've been at restaurants where we just got our meals served, me and my wife. They just put the plates in front of us, and some fight breaks out on the other side of the room, and I just dump money on the table and walk out.
Yep, just walk out.
we just leave.
Yep. Because you don't have time for it. Like, you don't want to risk, because
no,
Andrew,
I might end up having to shoot some motherfucker, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'd rather be home in bed.
Well, especially someone you don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I think it goes back to what you said. If you have to be on trial for your freedom, right? You'd rather
worth it?
You'd rather be, I was defending my family, right? Not, oh yeah, I saw somebody get it, because you don't even know what they're arguing about, right? You have no clue. You're an outsider, right?
Listen, if I'm defending my wife and my children and I have to shoot somebody, I could still end up in a cage for the rest of my life.
Yep.
But if I do, that was worth it. I can live with that. For some jamoke, I don't know.
Never seen this guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, never heard.
Bring your own gun and defend yourself. You're not my problem.
The other thing too is that we don't consider too, taking a human life changes you forever. You're not the same person after you've pulled the trigger than before.
Yeah, well, it's different for everybody, but
I would hope that
I think
someone
people
is.
Well, I can only tell you I've talked to a lot of people who've killed people, and they all respond differently. I think it would be safe to say that people should be prepared to assume that it's going to change them forever. I've talked to guys who some dude was raping their wife and they killed him, and they were totally fucking fine with that. They had no emotional difficulties afterwards. So
Well, I think let's call it the righteous kill is how you basically remain the same guy, right? Like the righteous kill. Whereas a mad dash because something shit jumped off. I think that's probably different. But like, yeah, if you see someone doing something to your family member, yeah.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a bad shoot necessarily. I mean, I've known people who've shot someone who broke into their home, burglar, middle of the night, broke glass. They shot him because the other person presented a weapon at them. And it turned out it was a 13-year-old kid. And they felt terrible trauma over that the rest of their lives because they killed a 13-year-old. What they did wasn't wrong. It wasn't unlawful. It's what I would have done under the same circumstances. But yeah, you feel like, holy shit. I mean, it would have been so easy for things to go. You wish the 13-year-old would not have made that decision.
Correct.
And would have lived, right? So you kind of feel that kind of remorse over it. So yeah, definitely. I'm not suggesting at all that people should feel like it's like the movies where Steven Seagal kills 50 people.
Yeah, they have.
You should be prepared to. I mean, it's an emotionally catastrophic event most of the time, but not always. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to kidnap my kid and I shoot you, that's not going to be an emotionally traumatic event for me. No offense,
not. But Andrew, we'll leave you out of here without any last words before we get you out of here.
Well, only my URL here. Hey, folks, if you'd like to get a free copy of my book, which of course I didn't bring to show you, but it's an actual free book, a physical book, not just a PDF download, no bullshit like that. It's an actual book. You can get that at lawselfdefense.com/free book. You can buy it on Amazon. In fact, go to Amazon, look at the reviews. It's, 1,000+ reviews, 5-star rated. People like the book. But don't buy it on Amazon. They'll charge you $25 in shipping and handling. Just get it from us at lawselfdefense.com/free book. We still charge you shipping and handling, but we give you the book for free.
Nice. I actually just wrote that down. Damn. I think this is stuff that guys need to learn, because I do know of someone who her kickboxing instructor got time by getting into a bar fight in Vegas because the guy wouldn't leave alone, right? He tried. This is according to her. He tried to leave. You know, you've heard those stories, right? The guy won't let, like, you're like, hey, get away from me, and the guy pushes, right? He's pressing, and
the more you're trying to get away, the more he's pressing.
The more you're trying to get away, the more, and you're like, dude, get back up off me, man. The guy he made a move, attacked him, and this dude, he's a trained fighter, right? Boom, boom. But what do you think happens, Branca? When he hits him, his head falls and hits the concrete.
Yeah.
He thought he knocked him out. You know what really happened?
Yeah.
He never woke up, right? And so when he went back home, he got extradited. He's like, what am I getting extradited for? They're like, yeah, you're facing, I think by that point, I want to say that was, I can't remember if it was second degree or just manslaughter. I think he copped a plea to manslaughter, but yeah, he had to face charges and he served time. He's like, dude, the guy literally like was trying to start stuff. I tried to leave. He's getting in my way to leave and then tries to attack me.
Right.
And it goes back to what you said though, Branca, you don't know. You don't know how that, we can all hear that story, right? And if everything was what she said it was, right? What he said, we're like, oh, that should be clear cut, right? You're like, yeah, but
no.
No,
so you have to be prepared for listen, so that guy did time, right? Let's pretend he did 8 years, whatever, for manslaughter. Was it worth it? I mean, did he genuinely think he was going to be killed or maimed if he didn't respond that way? If he genuinely thought that, well, okay, he got a shitty break, but better to be alive in prison and then get out than be dead or maimed, right, in the fight. But if he did it just because the guy was shit talking him, was that worth it? Probably not, right? So listen, if you have, I don't tell people not to fight, man. I fought. If you have to fight, you have to fight. But the consequences are substantial potentially, and just make sure that the stakes you're fighting for are worth the risks you're incurring, because the risks are real. So when you have to fight, man, when you have to fight, don't half-ass it, man. Fight 150%. You gotta win that fight, or nothing else matters. But if that's what you're prepared to do, just make sure that fighting 150% is worth the physical and legal risk you're incurring, because those are real and those exist. It's not a joke anymore.
Yeah, well said. Well, Branca, thanks for coming on, man. Wait, do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, just go to YouTube Law Self-Defense. You'll find.
Oh, okay.
I'm everywhere.
He's everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Well,
everywhere under
Andrew,
the
thanks
name.
for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew. I'll play the.
Well, absolutely, my pleasure. It's an honor to be here, Drex. It's been great to make your acquaintance.
I know, finally. I mean, people have been telling me. I was like, yeah, we'll have to talk about other random shit later. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm telling you, your name has been popping up on my radar for a while, because like, I think before you didn't have a name. I think people just said Nick was talking to the self-defense lawyer. I kept hearing the self-defense lawyer. I'm like, who are they talking about? So I never, because when no one gives you a name, they say something. It's like, how do you find the self-defense guy, right? Yeah. So then finally, when I remember hearing the name, and then someone said, no, he's doing a show with them now. At first, I mistook you for Jeff, so I thought you were Legal Vices.
Oh,
and then so I was like, oh, this must be the self-defense guy. And then he's like, no. And I think Jeff was like, no, you're thinking of Andrew Branca. I'm like, oh, okay, that's who the guy I've been hearing so much about. So yeah, it's great to finally have their show. Yeah, right?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for not wearing a tie tonight, Andrew. It really fit with the show's theme.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm going to title
Branca.
Yeah, I'm going to title the episode "Drexel versus No Tie Branca."
Oh,
well,
man.
you caught me after hours, but I have to confess, I'm just old, so for me wearing a tie is normal. I know for a lot of guys, like a tie is like a special occasion event, but I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I put a tie on. It's just normal for me.
Oh, and a little bit of housekeeping before we get out of here. Friday, Drex, this Friday, starting at 4:00, episode 100 of this podcast. Episode 100. Almost 2 years in this business.
I know,
So,
right?
guys.
Hey,
Be
by the
there.
way, if I don't know how you're structuring that show, but if you'd like me back Friday, I could probably do that. If it's just
definitely.
if you're talking like a like guys,
Live
No,
stream.
it's free
show,
form. It's just
Live
guys
stream.
shit talking. Yeah.
yeah.
It's guys
So-
shit talking live stream.
So, I mean, I can't promise. I have to ask my wife just to make sure. She's got some weird Halloween party shit. You believe I got to wear a fucking costume? I'm 57 years old.
Oh God, what are you going as?
I don't know.
Oh, you
Just
know.
get a hockey mask. Get an old school hockey mask. Put it on.
I'm like, can I just go as a lawyer who carries a gun? That would be easy.
It's so true because I remember being a kid, we were excited, right? Let's go, Halloween. We can't wait to get our costumes. You reach a certain age, you're just like, can I just go as me? Like I don't
can
care.
I throw my work overalls on?
Yeah, dudes are just like, man. Well, I will let you out of here with this last question, Andrew. Favorite horror movie? Halloween time. What's your favorite horror movie?
My favorite horror movie is actually not, I guess, technically a horror movie. It's Jaws. When I was 11 years old, my dad, who himself at that point was in a bad marriage to my mom, he used to take me to movies all the time to get away from my mom, and he took me to Jaws at 11 years old, and for a good decade after that, I could not swim in water where I couldn't see my feet. If it was a swimming pool that was not illuminated at night, I couldn't go
wow,
in.
you were
'Cause I was
legitimately
like,
traumatized.
I was certain a shark was going to show up, and that a 40-foot great white was going to show up.
Wow!
And that goddamn puddle pool and chop me in half.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're on a slip and slide, John. Where's he at?
Right, it's got to be here somewhere.
He's got to be
everywhere
here.
in the movie.
God damn! Great choice. Shit.
So if
Fucking
any of you
Jaws.
have an 11-year-old and you'd like to traumatize your child, Jaws is the movie.
Oh no, we got the new Jaws now. I'm gonna implore you to watch the new Jaws, The Shallows, with Blake Lively. Check it out with your wife.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, look it up. The Shallows.
Isn't The Shallows a song?
It's something. So
Wait,
okay.
Lady Gaga and what's his
The
name?
modern day Jaws is The Shallows, right? Came out in 2016. Yeah, man, the shark in this is real. Like, you see a shark like this. Yeah, I've seen a million sharks on TV. What's gonna happen? You're like, oh shit. I mean, this shark is the real deal. So, Andrew, make sure you catch that. The Shallows.
I will keep an eye out for it.
Give it a shot. We're out of here, y'all. Peace out.
Stay frosty.